mid-size events. That's our bread and butter. That's primarily where we focus with our system. That's what our customers use it for fronts, for cakes, for small shows, mid-size shows. We're not known for doing high-end power musicals, and I think over time, that's where we want to continue heading. I think there's no question that we want to break out of the mold of just the traditional small show wireless. We want to grow and compete on a high level against some of the larger systems. And that show, I think, was a great example that we are capable of doing some high-end shows. In fact, it was funny because at the event, there was an Italian company that was there, and they had come up to one of my customers that was using Cobra, and they said that our system was a Volkswagen, and that their system was a Ferrari, and that they should change. And they had actually been down there a month prior, and they did a large presentation in Mexico because they're trying to gain market share. And anyway, they had a long conversation. They were kind of joking, but not really joking about the system. And so the Italians, they went first with a brilliant show. I thought it was an amazing show. And we came out second with that show, and I think we really surprised them. And they actually came, and we beat them. And they came over afterwards and congratulated us and thanked us. And so the joke around was that the Volkswagen had beat the Ferrari. And so that's what the Mexicans were. And so it was a really, for me, it was really proud. It was a proud moment for me because we've only been around for about 3.5 years, and we started off with just a simple 18R and 18M. And I think one of the things that's really important to us is that whatever we design is backwards compatible, so people don't feel as if that they've purchased something and that they've lost that investment when we came out with the new device. Like I don't think you're going to see us come out with an 18R3. You're going to see us come out with things that can work with the 18R2 to make it more powerful. And so the fact that we were able to use modules that came out 3.5 years ago in that exact same show to produce that show with just simply a firmware update, I thought was a pretty neat feat. So. Okay, so I guess we can get started. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Kellner's. I want to thank Joel, Ryan, and everyone else that helped to kind of put this together. We did this 2 years ago. I think it was successful, and so they asked me to come back, and so I'm happy to be here. I think the format is that we're going to start today with about maybe an hour and a half, 2-hour presentation, break for lunch, and then depending on how far we get through this presentation, the idea is that I would have something in the early afternoon after lunch. People can come here, I can go into other advanced features, I can just answer any questions that anyone has about the system. Even today, when we break in about an hour and a half or 2 hours, I can continue through part of lunch if people want me to. As I go through things, feel free to ask any questions. If I feel that the question is more applicable later, I'll just probably answer it at that point in time. Or if it's applicable during that section, we can go into it. Great. Other things, brief history of Cobra. If anyone doesn't know, we've been around for about 3.5 years. Our systems are in over 70 countries. Probably about half of our sales are international. Half of our sales are domestic here in the United States. And we have a little over 4,000 customers throughout the world. We're actually a lot bigger than what I think people think we are. So we ship a lot of systems. We support a lot of our clients. Our main focus is ease of use and our customers. We are big about customer support, big about service. If you guys have any types of questions, problems, you need help, whether it's anything from just simple stuff with the system all the way through to designing power musicals, we really try to make ourselves available so you feel you're not just purchasing equipment, but you're purchasing myself, you're purchasing a knowledge base and a connection base throughout the industry that we can offer. So to us, it's more than just the electronics, it's also more of a holistic picture of the company and the support. So, great. So my goal today, for today, is that we're going to be really focusing this on putting together a pyro musical, putting together a show with Cobra. We're going to talk about, obviously, we're going to bring in some finale fireworks. I'm also going to mention some other different ways that you can create shows using Cobra. My goal coming out of this is for anyone that hasn't put together a show with Cobra or put together a Cobra or a pyro musical, is that they feel that they can come out of this with a basic knowledge of and a confidence that they can do this. It's really not that difficult, and where you get stuck, we're here to help. We've never had a case where we haven't been able to, allow someone to fire the show. We've gotten everyone that used the system through the functions. I did put together a presentation, and so I'm going to fly through this presentation, and then I'm going to actually go into some actual practical demonstrations. So this is going to be a little bit more verbal. So let's talk about the tools. So when you're doing a pyromusical, or really a show for that matter, obviously you're going to need a firing system. So the firing system is the electronics that's responsible for causing the electronic match or the igniters to ignite your product, your fireworks. And the firing system typically is comprised of a controller and field modules, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Soundtrack. You're going to need a soundtrack. One of the challenges, I think, to doing pyromusicals is, in some ways, you have to become a basic audio editor. Most people aren't capable, or haven't, not that they're not capable, most people haven't done that before. So one of the things I want to go through today is showing you how to use a tool called Audacity, which is a free open source tool that you can use for basic audio editing. Downloading files, importing them in, cutting them and slicing them up. You're going to need a design for your show. The result of that design is a script file. That design can be done in a number of ways. You can create a design, if it's already in your head, you can do it in Microsoft Excel. You can use our Cobra Show Creator product, which is a very, very light PC software for creating a script. Or you can use Finale, and Finale is an amazing tool that's very powerful, visual choreography. You can actually see your show before you fire. And hopefully it looks like that. You're going to need the fireworks, obviously, and you're going to need equipment, things like racks. If you plan on using things like flame pots or strobe pots and you want them elevated, you may need poles that you're sticking into the ground and you're taping things to. So these are really all the tools that go into creating a show. Okay. The firing system. So let's talk about what goes into the actual firing system. You have the controller. For Cobra, I'll try to grab this. This is our 18R2. So this is a firing controller. This is the master. You're going to have one of these fire your show. This is responsible for communicating all of the information to the firing modules as far as what they need to fire, when they need to fire. It's also responsible for giving you information that can make sure that everything is going to shoot up in the air, such as continuity, such as things like signal strength, to make sure you have good communications with your firing modules. It's also responsible for talking to the system that's going to play the audio, which I'll go through today, which is our brand new audio box. So this is your master controller, and obviously other systems have master controllers, but this is the fundamental component of firing your show, which is the controller. Next to that is your firing modules. This is a Cobra firing module. This is what you're going to place in the field. This is what you're going to connect directly to your fireworks. In pyrotechnics, you typically have two different ways to ignite a firework. One is using an electronic match, which is a professional pyrogen igniter that you need an ATF license to purchase. You can also use what are called Talon igniter clips, and those are used primarily for consumer visco fuse. And so Cobra supports both electronic match and the Talon igniter clips. So this is what you connect to your fireworks. And you can have one of these, you may have several. In that show there was 94. That's a lot. You don't need 94. So in fact, I have a show that I was going to go into today that only used 7. That was a brilliant show. I mean, you can do amazing shows with 3 modules, with 6 modules, even a few. So you're not required to do that. And especially with consumer product, with cakes, there's so much that they pack into those cakes that they become almost sections of your show. E-match and igniters, just talked about that. Okay, great. So with the soundtrack, audio files. One big thing when you're producing your audio files, if you can get them off of iTunes, it's much better. YouTube typically will compress the audio and the quality of it isn't very good. You may not recognize that until it's going through a large PA system. So you'll want to get your audio files, and so you can find different files, and again, I'll show you today how we can cut those up. Sound editing, we're going to talk about Audacity, which is the ability to import those files and move them around. The final audio file, I'm not sure why I said the audio file, anyway. The design, so then once you have your audio file, you're going to go into design. Again, you can use Excel, you can use Cobra Show Creator, and you can use Finale Fireworks, and ultimately that's going to generate the script file, which is going to go directly into the actual controller itself. Again, with the equipment, racks, boards, poles. Boards, you can see people very commonly will actually have angled boards, so it's just a piece of board on angles. You can put the cakes so they angle out like this, creating kind of cool effects. So all of your racks, your boards, your poles. E-matches, igniters. Labeling and preparation, again, something we'll go into today. Preparation is key, making sure that every single piece of product that you're going to connect to your firing module is properly labeled. So you know what channel it's going to go to, you're going to know what cue that you're going to plug it into. That's critical. A lot of times, you know, even for simple shows, when you're out there, you get confused, you're not sure what goes where. You know, is this the right product? Is this the right module? Anything you can do in advance to prepare and label that is great. And tools like Finale, tools like Show Creator, they can all generate reports that give you that information. And they are your friend. Print lots of them. Because you lose them and people need them. So that's one thing. Sometimes you run in shows and there's only one copy of the report. So lots and lots of reports. I printed 3 of them for a show that only has 4 modules. So there you go. Execution. Dry running your show is absolutely critical. Setting up your field module, setting up your controller in your living room, and watching your show fire. Obviously you're not going to do that if you have 20, 30, 40 modules, maybe you will. But actually running through the execution, basic tests, put a couple of igniters on there, watch them fire. Small things like that. It's not that you're expecting any problems, but it just gives you that practice so that when you're in the field, it'll work properly. The only difference really at that point is something's connected to the firing module and the distances are greater. And, so dry runs are absolutely critical to do. Start early. Get your setup done by 2 o'clock. I know that's just a number, but a lot of times people underestimate what it takes, especially if they haven't done it before, or even if they've only done it once or twice. These things take a lot of time, and you have to account for problems. I used to, on larger shows, only start checking the signal strength about 30 minutes before the show, until I ran into a problem once. And it was really bad, and I think Ryan ended up running up and down the Albany Plaza stairs like 80 times to try to fix it. So do everything early. There's nothing wrong with being well prepared in advance. Check your continuity, check your signal strength. A lot of people don't check signal strength because they assume it's going to be fine, but in many cases they realize maybe the antenna wasn't placed on the module. So it wasn't anything with the system or interference or positioning, just small, dumb things that you end up missing. Another big thing, and I'll just kind of stress this, if you're doing a large show, especially a power musical, and I'll get into the battery life, replace out your batteries, the operational batteries. Just get new ones. You can buy them for $1, $1.25. We sell them for cheap. And, arm your systems early. If you can arm them an hour or 2 in advance, do it. Check your continuity again, check your signal. Let them fall asleep. Don't worry about the batteries. If they go in brand new, even if those things were on and in active mode, they're going to last for a good, 3 or 4 hours before you start getting low batteries. Okay, great. So that was just kind of a basic overview of the different components of setting up a show. And so why don't we just go ahead, and I'm going to just start with some of the basic introduction, again, of the Cobra equipment, and then we'll just go right into doing some basic sound editing. So again, this is the firing controller. So how many people are familiar with Cobra? How many people own Cobra, actually? Okay, there's quite a lot. How many people have never used a firing system? Okay, so how many people are not familiar with the concept of continuity? Okay, so everyone understands that, great. So just real quick, I'll give a basic demonstration to those who aren't familiar with Cobra and looking for igniter clips, which are right here. So how Cobra works is Cobra is a bidirectional wireless system. What bidirectional means is that information, if you're familiar with some of the lower ends, the entry-level Chinese systems, and you just have a little handheld controller, those are unidirectional wireless systems, meaning you have the field module, and you have the controller, and when you tell it to fire, information goes from the transmitter to the receiver, and that's it. There's no information coming back from those receivers. You can't check continuity, you can't check signal strength from your controller. None of that information comes back, so it's unidirectional. So with Cobra, what's really nice is anything, battery levels, continuity, signal strength, all that information can be garnered directly from the actual remote, which is really beneficial because even though most times everything you felt comfortable, everything was set up within the field, you think that you charged your modules, you think that the batteries were new, or you know, that stuff can change. And those small changes, those small problems, you're not always aware of them. So many times having all that information available from the controller is extremely valuable. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and turn on a field module. All of our field modules have 18 Qs, so you can see these are little speaker terminals that are here. And you can plug up to 10 E-matches in series, up to 4 E-matches in parallel, and up to 4 Talon igniter clips in parallel onto one Q. And so what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to take one of our igniter clips, and I'm going to grab the wire here, and I'm going to plug that right into one of the Qs on the system. And obviously you would be connecting this igniter clip directly to the firework. But on the unit itself, if this is plugged in, you can just simply press this test button, and you'll see there's a little green light. So on Q number 1, this is telling you that you have good continuity. Now what's cool is on your remote, if I were to go to channel number 3, which is the channel that this module is on, you'll see I also have a little green light. And so this firing module is telling me that I have continuity on this Q, and that information is actually being sent from the module to the remote, which is bidirectional. If I were to unplug that wire, you're going to see that that information goes away. It's no longer green because I no longer have continuity. So the modules are constantly updating the remote with that information. Another thing too you'll see is these LEDs are red. Well, why are these LEDs red across my different channels? Well, that's because the script is expecting these Qs to have continuity. So I get calls oftentimes like, my remote's broken, there's all these red lights, what's going on? It's because that it's expecting continuity directly from the remote. I'm sorry, from the module, from the script. And so the whole goal is that when you're setting up your show and all of your field modules are out there, that you can simply scan through all of your channels and you look for red LEDs. And if you see a red LED, then you know that you have a problem. You can reference back to your report and you can go and you can fix it within the field. For basic firing of the unit, it's really simple. All you do is you press this button here in the lower left-hand corner that says arm. Once you arm the unit, and I'm just going to show you this, I'm just going to press the arm button, you'll see the red LED is blinking, and you'll see the number 1 appeared. Okay, and I'll just do that once more. So I'm just going to disarm it, and I'm going to press arm again, and you'll see this red light blinks, and you'll see it started with showing 0, and you'll see here in a second, it's going to show 1. What that means is that it just found a firing module in the field that is armed. So if you had 5 field modules, you would expect to see the number 5. And it's confirming that the field module, the key is properly within the arm position. It's telling you that obviously it's turned on. So there's a number of checks that this field module is doing, and it's only going to give you that number if everything's okay. So that's a really, it's a small feature, but it's an extremely helpful feature, especially when you have 94 modules. You want to see the number 94 appear. And in fact, on that show, we didn't. We actually saw 93 appear, and it took us a while. We actually had to find a module that wasn't synced up. And it was actually quite easy to do because we had a little map of the field and we were able to quickly identify which channel it was. We're like, okay, we don't have continuity on this channel, and we referenced our map and we found it within the field. So now basic manual firing, real simple. If you're on the channel of the field module, all you do is you just press the button, and that's going to fire that Q. So you can see that just simply by doing that, it's firing the Q on the unit. And so what's nice about Cobra is that For just simple, if you want to go out in your backyard and pop off a couple E-matches, it's really easy to do. Just turn on your field module, turn on your remote, arm it, go to that channel, and you can start firing cues. Or we can scale it up to larger types of pyro musicals. Great. Any basic questions of operation on the unit? Okay, so let's talk about sound editing, because typically this would be the first thing that you would do. So there's a software program, it's called Audacity. I do believe that I have a link to it let's see if I can actually type. Okay. So you can download this online. Again, it's free software. It's probably the most popular free audio editing software that exists out there. I suggest that you download your music files from iTunes. They provide the highest quality audio files that are out there. YouTube, again, will compress them. And what you would do is with an Audacity, this is your user interface. You would just simply click on the file button at the top, and you would click on the import menu. And within import, you would just simply choose audio. And in this case, on my computer, I happen to have a Hey Mickey MP3 file. And you can just simply open this up, and that's going to import this directly into Audacity. And it should appear, there it is. Okay, so this is the visual representation of that audio file within Audacity. The basic control is no different than what you would expect. You have the ability to play audio, so you can just simply hit play, and that's going to play audio, hopefully to Dane. I'm not sure where Dane went. Dane? Dane?
Yeah.
Audio. Not playing.
Oh, yeah, what?
The computer. That's okay. So this would normally play audio, you would hear it. And within Audacity, you can do simple things, like you can actually, if you click on the View tab, you can zoom in. And you'll see also within Audacity that there's a little hotkey. So you have Control 1, Control 2, Control 3. So I believe that zooming in is Control 1. So if you just hold down Control and 1, you can actually see that I'm zooming in. And when I do that, you'll see the scale here. You've got 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 45 seconds. If I zoom out, you'll see that that scale becomes larger. Okay, so we'll try that again. Just to make sure. Good morning. Okay. So this would be the audio file that you would download. And you'll see, even in the beginning, if I just kind of zoom in here, you'll see way in the beginning here, I have a little bit of silence. And then here's obviously where the audio starts. So you can play it, you can pause it, just like you would with any type of an audio device. Now, let's say that you have another audio file that you want to add to your soundtrack. What you would do, and hopefully I've got something in here, I'm just going to click on Import, and I'm going to click on Audio. And I believe if I go in here, I should have, let's try something here. Okay, so let's just grab this. This is another audio file. This was, I just grabbed this randomly, but it's a haunted mansion. I'm going to do a Halloween show in October, so I was designing something. So you can import another audio file. So let's say you picked 3 songs you wanted to do during your show. You would download those, you would save those to your computer, you would open up Audacity, and you could import each of those soundtracks. And each time that you import the soundtrack, you'll see that those actually appear within the software. So this is our Hey Mickey soundtrack right here. This is our Disneyland soundtrack down here. And what you can do, you'll actually see, if I actually start playing this, you're going to hear they're going to both play at the same time. So I'm just going to do this. Obviously that sounds terrible. So what you can do is you can mute each of these sections. So let's say I wanted to mute the first Hey Mickey soundtrack, and I want to go back and play this. So I can just mute that, and I can play it.
With ghoulish delight.
That's a nice sound, isn't it? Okay, so you can, basically you can play each of these independently. So you can mute one, and if you have 3 different sound files in here, you can play them independently. And what you can do is by selecting the section, so for example, you see I can select the top, I can select the bottom, if I were to go in here and let's say I wanted to grab this section right here, and I'm just going to zoom in again, Control 1 will zoom in, and this actually looks to be a stereo file, so I'm just going to grab this section because I like it. If I go in here and I edit this, and I believe here, I can do, Control C, that should copy it. I think you actually have to be stopped to do this. So, and that's one small thing. You always have to stop in Audacity for some good reason. It doesn't, if you're in this kind of play mode, it won't let you copy things. And so if you find that you can't copy or paste, just make sure that your audio is stopped. And so I'm just going to go ahead and you can just do edit, and you can copy. And now if I go up here into my Hey Mickey soundtrack, because you want to have kind of one primary soundtrack that you're going to be editing. And let's say I want to put this as an introduction into Hey Mickey. I'm just going to click on the spot in which I want to place it, and I'm going to go to edit, and I'm going to paste. And now what it's done is it's taken that same audio from the Haunted Mansion that was below, and it's moved it up here. And so now if I just go ahead, I'm going to mute the Haunted Mansion, I'm going to unmute my Hey Mickey soundtrack, and I'm going to play this. So we don't want that. That sounds terrible. So we're just going to go ahead and remove the cat. A bad way to start a show. A horse. All right. So what you can do now is go click on Edit. And who said that? With the kid, you win a prize for the correcting me on that. So, delete. So you can delete that. And now let's play it this time. So that sounds much nicer. And so this is the beginning. You may have something a little scary within your show that you want.
When hinges creak in doorless chambers.
So cool. So what we've done now is we've actually imported 2 audio files, taken a section from one and moved it into another. And what you can do is you can repeat that process until you've ultimately put together the soundtrack that you like. And once you're done, you can actually just go in here and you'll see, I'm just going to click on this little X, and that's going to go ahead and remove, it should remove, I think I have to highlight it first. Go away. Here we go, see? You have to stop. See, every time make sure that you're stopping in Audacity. And so now I have one audio file that's been combined from 2, and you can repeat that from as many audio files as you like. A couple small things. If you ever want to add silence to your show, you just simply click on the point that you want to add the silence. So let's say that I want to add a little bit more of a pause here. You go up and you can click on Generate, and then you can choose Silence. You enter this, and it can you can enter as much silence as you want. So let's say I wanted to put in 5 seconds of silence. You just simply type in 5, you click OK, and that actually inserted some silence into my show. And in fact, one of the things that I definitely recommend for all of your audio files, especially with the audio box, is to always have about 5 seconds of silence in the beginning of the audio file. And the reason for that, and it's not just Cobra, a lot of systems typically have what's called a pre-roll. And it's basically just a certain amount of time in the beginning of the show where it's normally used for time code feeds, where the systems can become familiar. From our system, when we first start the show, it needs a couple seconds just to align the audio. In some cases, you can hear a little bit of a skip where the audio is kind of jumping. And so we definitely recommend that you always have a little bit of silence. So if I went in here, and you can see I'll click on these double purple left arrows, that skips me right to the start. I click Generate, I'll click Silence, and we'll add about 5 seconds. And that puts it right into the beginning of the song. And so it's really actually a fairly simple tool. And again, if you want to, you can go in, you can play, you can go in, you can zoom in. Sometimes if I have like a 5-minute soundtrack, a lot of times in songs there's a chorus, and you can basically cut out a couple of the choruses and merge them together. Not merge, but kind of find the point in which it starts the chorus, and find another part later in the song where it starts the chorus, and cut out that entire middle section. So you can take a song that's normally 5 minutes, and maybe you want to bring that down to like 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. And so using Audacity, you can do that. You can also edit, you can undo, so you can always do Control-Z, or I believe it's just Edit, and you can undo silence. So if I'm like, I didn't like that, I'm going to do Control-Z. and it keeps a history of all of those changes so you can easily kind of edit those out. Other little tips with this: save files as you go along. If you get to a point where you're comfortable with what you've got, but you want to try something new, save that. Save it as a different file so that you can come back to it if you didn't like the changes that you performed. And you can't do that really enough. And come up with a simple naming convention, version 1, version 2, and then in parentheses explain what that was. Because sometimes it's tricky to figure out what you were trying to do that next day. Audacity has a lot of other different neat kind of options, other kind of cool things that I think are helpful. A lot of times when you're editing audio, it's like these abrupt starts to the sound. One technique that you can use for that, so for example, let's imagine here. So we're just going to play into this Hey Mickey part. So let's say I didn't like the fact that that came in so harsh. What you can do is I'm just going to do Control-1. I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm just going to kind of highlight this first section here. If you go to Effects, hold on a second. Let's see here. You have to stop it. I catch myself doing that. You click on Effect, and you can choose Fade In. And so you'll see, before I do this, you'll see how this is kind of almost like an abrupt start here. If I just choose this, and I go to Effect, and I click on Fade In, what you see there, and I'll just back this out, but you'll see it kind of, it looks like it's growing, and if I back that out, you'll see that and in fact you can do Control-Z, Control-Y, so it's a redo and a do. So I can see that it's now fading in, and now, I don't really hear that too much. But if you can even redo it. So let's say I wanted to really have this thing fade in, and you probably wouldn't ever want to do this, but you can do this, so fade in, and that will give you even a more gradual kind of building. Okay, so that is much better. Now, in the same respect, a lot of times you may want your audio to fade out. So if you go all the way to the end, you can do something similar. You can highlight this whole section, you can you can click on Effect, and you can fade out. And that'll also give you kind of...
Can I go home now?
And so just simple fading in, fading out, editing, a lot of those things can take your soundtrack for something that sounds just kind of choppy to something that sounds more professional. You don't have to be a professional sound person to do these types of things. And the great thing is Audacity is a free tool. Does that make sense? Does everyone understand that? Feel comfortable that you could do that? Or any questions about Audacity? Go ahead.
When you download from iTunes, doesn't it come in as an ACC file?
That's a great question. Someone else may be able to answer that. Oh, it was an ACC file you said?
Yeah, because I've downloaded stuff from iTunes before and
Okay.
not be able to import it or use it as anything other than...
That's a great question.
It's Apple's format.
It will? Okay, so Frank said that that's the Apple proprietary format. If you click on this, I'm not sure if that's in there. It should be.
Click on all supported files.
Yeah, all supported files. So it's I would be very surprised if Audacity can't bring that in. Have you actually tried it with Audacity? Or no?
No, I
Okay.
didn't pull it for...
Okay, it should. If it doesn't, I can get that answered for you. So there should be, I know that people do it all the time. So go ahead, Frank.
Probably an important thing to remember too is that you're bringing different files and you want to make sure that your files are normalized the same. Some music will be a lot louder
Yes.
than others, so you can show how you can do that normalized if you're trying.
Yeah, actually you may want to show me. How do you do that? What's that?
Just grab a certain part of it.
So I'll just grab the
Grab a
fact.
certain part, yeah, and then put it
This-
normalized.
Yes.
I like to normalize all my files, well, I'm in the position, so I go to like 97%, so that should be fine.
So you would leave it just as this?
I like to take all my
Okay.
files and make sure they're normalized. So what that means is the amount of volume
Yeah.
the file has. You can have different songs from different sources, and one will be equalized like 97%, other will be on 80. So if you're playing your script, one song is going to be quieter than the other one. So
That's a great point. So what Frank's saying is that you may import different audio files. Each of those may have certain volumes. One may be really loud, one may be very quiet. So one thing you can do is for each of the different tracks that you have when you import it, the first thing you probably want to do is normalize that. And then you can start editing them together into your
That's a good
master.
practice to
And to do that, you click on effects and you would click on normalize. This right now is just,
It's not taking -1 decimal, so I think it's 199. I believe.
so you would put this in at 99?
Well, no, that was -1.
Okay. Okay.
Go ahead and try it.
We're going to do a video on this too, on specifically audio editing. So that's great feedback and something we can do. So. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
Real basic question, but is there any of the people that produce music ever claim copyright thing about using their music commercial?
I think if you load it to YouTube, YouTube's got. I've never had any type of situations where I've been in a show. So the question was, is any type of copyright infringement when you're downloading the audio and you're using it within your own show? I've never heard of any problems with it. I think it probably depends on the show. If you're doing an NFL, halftime show, there'd probably be obviously something you'd want to make sure that you've got covered. If it's a backyard show or even a township type of an event, I've never heard of any problems.
Technically, copyright applies, but.
Yeah.
I was like a music affiliate for about 12 years. We put the sound in both your restaurants, hotels, churches, that kind of stuff. ASCAP, BMI are pretty touchy about stuff like that. But the only time you really have to be careful is if you're doing a broadcast, like if they're going to put it on TV, something like that. Disney is your worst enemy, so be careful with Disney. My daughter was a gymnast, and they did a Disney show. All little kids tumble out for Disney. They recorded everything on DVD, and they sold them for $2 to the parents. A friend of a friend of a friend of a friend worked at Disney, saw that, and Disney flipped out. They were like, your gym's fine, take it. I'm taking it. So be careful with Disney. I said, but unless you're doing something big,
The general thing is if you're gonna make money on that CD or DVD, then you can.
don't sell it.
Don't sell it. Go ahead. So the question was importing off a movie soundtrack. Are you talking about specifically for copyright or just how to?
Well, just how to.
Right. That's a great question. So there are different websites. I think like keepvid.com. Oh, okay. Yeah, if you had, I'm pretty sure that there's software that you can simply use. And in fact, does Audacity allow you to take the audio off of a DVD and convert it into a audio file?
I use the Power Amplifier and things like that. There's hundreds of tools that rip DVDs.
Yeah.
The audio. You can just do freeware, DVD rip, and
Yeah.
you'll find numerous ones.
So I think what was said.
Yeah, CDs, especially, there's a program called Audio Grabber.
Audio grabber.
It's not supporting us, but it works perfectly, and it does a good job. It's not small, it's just shaped, and you can rip CDs so that easily.
Okay. So this is great. So I think one of the things that we'll want to do as well with Cobra is in our documentation, and also I think it makes sense to have a little section on our website where we can link to a lot of these tools. So if you have any questions, go through me. Whatever I end up giving to you, I'll put up on the website, and and even, Frank, if you've got some suggestions to send to us, we can get that stuff up there. In the end, bringing it all through Audacity is definitely a great way to go. Now, any other questions so far? Go ahead.
I was just going to comment on what you said. If you want to open a new blank file, and what I do is I just take an 8-inch jack and plug it into my computer, into the microphone jack on my computer, and then plug the other end into the audio out on your DVD or whatever you're doing, and then just hit record on here and you can record whatever from whatever you're.
That's great. That's a great thing. Yeah, you can plug any type of audio output device into the microphone input on Audacity, and I believe if you just simply do file and I think, or actually do right click here. How do you add a specific section? Or here, I think. There you go. So in fact, I just clicked record, and that took audio. I think it actually took the audio output and probably brought it back into the input. And so now you have a section here.
And you got to set your things at 4,400.
Okay, right. Great. Any other questions so far? Please.
Now, do you have to use like an MP3 file or a WAV file? Can you combine the two? Do you have to convert to one or the other?
You can, okay, so for import, whatever the source format is, Audacity should support it. So for importing, you can import from all different sources. For the output, which I'll get to in a second here, Cobra, specifically with the audio box, does require a very specific sample rate, as well as the frequency. So, which I'll show in a few seconds here.
When you import, that is raw audio right there. So whatever, if you bring a wave in, that is a wave. You bring in a
Yeah.
that is a wave. It converts it to a wave file, basically.
Okay.
That stays right there, it's raw audio.
When you're done and you're happy with whatever you've produced, and keep in mind also within Audacity you can save these as project files, which are well, I guess they're audio files, but it's an Audacity file that contains all the settings that you've applied. When you want to export this, you just simply go to File and you go to Export. And for example here, I may want to just save this here. I'm going to call this audio box, which is actually a requirement for Cobra within this current firmware release of the audio box. So I'm just going to call this audio box. And in the options here, we recommend that you're using a 320 kbs quality, and that's going to provide the best quality of audio. You can also choose, and I think if anyone already owns the audio box, we used to support 128, we now support 320. So you just want to always click on this little options button, and we have this all documented in a PDF for the export process. But you just want to choose this. You can export this file. It brings up this pop-up. You don't have to enter in any information here if you don't want, and just simply click OK. And it's going to export that audio file directly into the folder that you saved it to. And in fact, what I'm just going to do here is just a demonstration. I'm going to let this finish.
That's rendering that to me.
Correct. So this is creating, well in this case it's actually creating an MP3 file.
Right. Rendering a wave to us.
A wave to MP3.
So won't you end up having multiple audio box files if you're gonna?
Yeah, so the question is, would you have multiple audio box files, and it may be, potentially difficult to keep organization of that. No different, if you're familiar with Cobra today and you're using Excel or even Finale or even Show Creator, all of them have kind of their own proprietary source format. So in the case of Audacity, you could create different projects, which are Audacity files. And when you're ready to load those onto a thumb drive that you're going to place into the audio box, you can just simply export that to the audio box file. No different than the Cobra 18R2 requires the file to be cobra.csv. You may not have a bunch of Cobra CSV files, you may have a bunch of XLS files, or even just CSV files that are named something else. You copy that to the thumb drive, you rename it to cobra.csv, and that's how you get it into the system. Okay, so now that this has been created, I'm just going to simply take a standard flash drive, normal thumb drive, put it into the computer, and we're just going to go here to, I believe, let's see, this in let's see here. I'm not quite sure what I see. There it is. Okay, so this just happens to be the file that I've exported. And I can just take that file and I'm just going to drag it into my thumb drive and I'm going to copy it. So again, export from Audacity, the file name is audiobox.mp3, save that to your thumb drive. Dane, is that audio box hooked up? So if I play it out, I can...
I sensed it, I didn't hear it. I sensed it.
I can't hear high frequency, so...
But I've been a sound man for 24 years. It's all that.
So, this is probably a good time to introduce the audio box. This is a brand new product that I'm sure there's some here that probably already know this. I mentioned handheld controller, the remote. We talked about the firing module as two components of your firing system. This is a third component. This is a brand new component. This is something that we just released. We've actually got lots of these all throughout the world being used in our beta testing process. But what you can think of this is it's kind of like a wireless MP3 player. Right? It's a firing module that instead of shooting fireworks, it plays music. More specifically, it plays an audiobox.mp3 file that's on a thumb drive. Okay, very specifically, that's what it does. And that's all it's designed to do. And so on the unit itself, it comes standard in a case, so you don't have to purchase a case. It runs off of 3 AA batteries. It's got a battery life of a couple hours. On the unit itself, it has a simple on and off rocker switch that turns red when you turn it on. You can plug the thumb drive right into the unit itself. Today, the thumb drive does have to remain in the unit in order to play the audio. We do have an area for an SD card, which is like a little memory card that the hardware will support. So we have that built into the hardware. The software does not yet support that. When it does, you'll be able to put in the thumb drive. It's going to copy that MP3 file locally onto the unit, and you can remove it, similar to the 18R2. Today, it doesn't do that, but it's not too bad. Just leave it in the unit. We haven't had any problems with it yet. On the box, you have a sync button. For those of you who aren't familiar with Cobra, all of our firing modules, and in this case the audio box, do need to be synced up to a controller. It's a very simple process. You just hold the sync button on the controller and the module, in this case the audio box, together for about 3 seconds, and the lights blink, and then they restart and they're in sync. The reason that you do that is because you may be at a shoot site where there's other people using audio boxes or other people using controllers or field modules. You don't want their controller to set off your fireworks or start playing your audio. Okay? And what's nice is you can always change the units to which they're synced. So once they're synced, you can always move them around however you see fit. The unit has an audio test button. So if you want to perform a sound check, I'm going to pull the eardrums.
You won't take that.
Okay.
Just take it back over there and get your mic back now.
There's nothing different from playing out.
Okay, well, I'm about to. So if you press this audio test button, so this is playing our audio. So what that's allowing for you to do is perform a sound check. So you can make sure that your audio sounds good. And I've used this, I've probably done about, I don't know, maybe 15 shows with this device right now. And it's really cool because you just go over to, like if you're doing a wedding show or if you have your own personal sound system, take the unit, go up to the sound system, plug it in, you have RCA, 1/4 inch, 2 headphone jacks. We're adding an XLR option to the unit, it'll be an accessory. Plug it into your sound system, in this case, Dane's wonderful Bose system. And you press the audio test button. It starts to play your audiobox.mp3 file right from the beginning. In this case, we had a little bit of silence, and that's why we're not hearing anything, but now we hear it. So you can get your levels right. You have a left and right gain volume control right on the unit. So I can make this loud, I can make it quiet, and so I can do that right from the unit, or the sound guy can do that from his system. And so you kind of work together to make the sound about right. And what's really neat is you don't have to start your show with your controller to do this. You just push this button. If you want it to stop, you push it again. And other than that, it has a low battery indicator. And so one may look at that and say, hey, that's really, not that fancy, but that's the whole point. It's supposed to be simple. It's not supposed to be complex. It's supposed to make it so you can easily do shows without having to worry about it. So you get your sound check good. And then what you would do is on your controller, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on my 18R2, which is right here. And what's nice is you'll see the lights blinking and it comes up with the number 1. You'll notice I don't have any firing modules on. Well, that number 1 is my audio box. So what's really cool, and I'll explain this in the video that we're going to come out on this, is that This is a really, even though this is simple, this is a really complicated piece of hardware. We had a lot of challenges making this thing work really well, not only with the quality, but with audio issues. And, for example, you take for granted small things. If you have an iPod or something and suddenly it just kind of does something weird and it stops playing audio, no big deal, you just restart it, you hit replay. You can't have that happen in a show. You can't. So all of those little annoying glitches that you see that are caused by things, we couldn't overlook them. So we had to fix all that stuff, and it was really time consuming, and it was really challenging, and we played different soundtracks, probably hundreds of hours in the office just listening for problems and things like that. So one of the really cool things, which I'm getting to, is that when you arm this unit, or even when it comes up in test mode, and you see that number 1 appear on the system, which it should here in a second, there it is. That number 1 represents so much more than just number 1. That represents a whole bunch of checks that we're doing. We're making sure the USB is engaged. We're making sure that different communications are working between the processor and with the RF transceiver and everything. So if there's a problem, even though this thing looks like it's working, you're not going to see the number 1. You may have to come over and, God forbid, you'd have to restart it or anything, but the system's doing that. In addition, if this unit has a problem, someone turns it off, turns it back on during the show, it's smart enough to automatically realign to where the audio is. So there's a lot of safe checks that are built into this to make sure that it's working, to make sure that when you see the count that everything's in good shape. Now, when you want to start your show, you just simply, and I think in this case it was probably channel 0Q1, and I'll get to that in a second when we get into the scripting, but you can configure the 18R2 so that you can tell it which button you want to press to start the show. So I'm just going to press this button, so now you hear the audio, right? So that's now playing within perfect synchronization with the audio. If I wanted to pause that, I just simply press the on button again, it pauses. I want to restart it. Okay, so you now have full control of your audio. And when we set this unit up, we actually put probes. We put electronic probes into the actual audio output. We put probes on the modules when they're firing cues. The accuracy of this with the audio, with the timing of the firing, is with all of the wireless communications and all the bridges that it needs to go through, it's about plus or minus 15 milliseconds. And that's the max variance. So you're typically sitting there riding around anywhere between plus or minus 5, maybe maximum of 10, and every once in a while it may get off a little bit. And that's 1/100th of a second. And when it adjusts for any of that drift that's accounted for the wireless or the communications between all the devices, it's actually very slowly increasing the rate or decreasing the rate of that audio. And it's not recognizable by the human ear, but it's keeping on perfect timing. And so we spent a lot of time making sure that the audio is playing exactly in perfect sync with the fact that we do have a wireless communication system. And that was challenging, and we went through a lot of testing to make sure that worked properly. And in the end, to produce something that's just as simple as starting the show and having it play the audio. The other really neat thing about the audio box is that you don't physically have to be next to your sound system. And a lot of systems, you have the computer, which has an audio output that's then connected directly into the actual controller. And sometimes, especially with wireless, the best place to fire your show may not be where the sound guy is. The sound guy may be up, especially we do a lot of professional stuff in sporting stadiums and things where there are awkward areas. So the idea is you put this where the sound guy is, and you stand where it's best to fire the show. That Mexican show, we were maybe 150 feet away from all those modules, perfect signal. Audio box was way over somewhere else. And all this thing needs is one command to get this thing going, and it will go. And even if we didn't do any of the adjustment for the drift, it's something like 30 milliseconds it drifts over about an hour period. So no one would even notice any of that going on. And it doesn't require a very beefy time code feed. It's a very light digital signal that's coming out of the R2 to the audio box. So this is, and I guess my point is that in low signal or even potentially interference prone environments, all this thing needs is one thing to go and it's good. And it'll stay on track. So it's very good to use in kind of low signal environments, where traditionally in the time code environments, you're using these big Marty systems, these really high powered time code feeding systems, but when they get a little bit off, it can start playing with the firing system. And we don't need that. So we've kind of reversed the concept of how audio is done with this. And we're not reinventing the wheel. There's companies in Europe that do this, so I'm not like, I call this really smart thing. It's just, it's pretty straightforward.
Hey Scott, so
Yes.
we get feedback then from that module to your remote for signal strength
You bet.
and battery?
Yes, so a couple things. So signal strength is channel 99. So if you go to channel 99 and you check your signal, that will tell you what it is. So I'm at a minus 33, minus 27. So that's one thing that you just kind of have to know. We're probably going to just have a little note on here, but this basically sends its signal strength back off of channel 99. Battery levels, if this goes low, it will tell the remote that it has a low battery. So your remote will actually display LO, it'll tell you the address of the audio box. It will then tell you, in fact in our new version, 303, which is going to come out next week, not only does it tell you that it's low, it now tells you exactly what it is, which is really annoying today because it'll tell you what the low battery is, but you don't know if you're at 30% or you're at 5%. So it now tells you exactly what it is, and that's a 0 to 9 number. Does that answer your question? Okay. Other cool thing, you can use multiple audio boxes. So not just one, you can have two, you can have three. So if you have different sound systems, you can use them together. You can even put one out in the field for verbal time cues, because you may not have enough equipment, so you give one to another guy, and his audio file is telling him when to handle products. Another thing which I don't get much into, which I get into in our video online, is you can feed third-party firing systems. So if you own Fire One, Fire Digital, PyroMe, any system that can accept a time code feed, you can use this audio box and the 18R2 to augment wireless Cobra modules to that system. How does that work? You take your audio box, you plug this thing into that firing system, so it's outputting into the firing system. Instead of loading an audio file, you load a time code file, okay? You start your show on the 18R2, that starts the audio playing in perfect sync. It's also firing your Cobra modules, but that time code signal is going into your firing system, which is then now firing whatever firing system's modules in sync with your modules. And you could actually layer it, so the time code's on the left, the audio is on the right, and you could have one module or one audio box that's actually playing the audio through the sound system and feeding time code into a third-party firing system. Because I know with some of the other firing systems, wireless is expensive. You know, we're not anywhere near that expensive, and so maybe Cobra is a better option for that if you're looking to add wireless to an existing wireless system. Great, okay, so does that, any questions on so we've outputted the file from the computer, we put it on a thumb drive, we placed that into the audio box, we did our sound check, we haven't gone into the scripting part, which we'll get to, but we started our show, the audio starts, so I can pause it, I can restart it, things like that. Go ahead. Box, just go to 99, and then you'll see it there. It's just a channel that most people don't use, so it's just a little bit out of the way. No, you don't lose it. You can still use it for firing modules. If you had a firing module on channel 99 and you checked your signal strength, no different than if you had two modules. It just rotates through them. Absolutely. Yeah. No, you don't lose the channel. Go ahead.
Does stopping the audio stop the show?
Yes. Now, we're adding, there's some, if you're around, well, obviously if you're around tonight, if anyone's around tonight, come out to the booth. We've got some even new kind of stuff that we're going to leak into the world today, so you can see some really cool things that I'm incredibly excited about. But yeah, so we're going to add some stuff. Sometimes people want the firing to stop, but the audio to continue, or in some cases vice versa. So those are things that we don't support that today, where you can stop the firing but keeping the audio going, but there's no question that we're going to add and support that in the future.
So for some reason, it's during the middle of the show, you lose your audio.
If you lose your audio, it will continue to fire. Absolutely. Yeah, because, and that's what's nice about these units and the modules, they're all independent single points of failure. You're not running off of one, it's not, you know, obviously the controller is a single point of failure, but everything else is like a discrete node on the end. So if it goes down, it's just that. Even if this died and your battery went dead, you can put in your batteries, turn it on, and it'll catch right up. Yes.
USB size, smaller, better.
Yeah, we've had some trouble with USB files, and I think actually with our 3.1 firmware release is going to solve it, but for some reason, and to be honest, we have not put as much effort into it as we should, but in some cases, thumb drives aren't compatible with Cobra. The SanDisk brand from Walmart that you can purchase is like a guaranteed working device. I've never had any problems with SanDisk. Buy the cheaper ones, you don't have to buy the more expensive ones if you don't need to. In our new 3.1 firmware release, Freescale, which is the company that handles all the code within the processor, we're upgrading to the newest version, which is a whole bunch of bug fixes around USB. So we're pretty sure that that's going to solve the problem in our 3.1 firmware release for compatibility. Okay, great.
Is there any limitation on the
Is the question, is there any limitation on the thumb drive size? You mean the file size? Or
file size and capacity?
no, I mean, I haven't. I think in some cases we found higher capacity thumb drives have trouble. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. Correct. So it's not like one of those things where it's, you know, you're running risk during the show if you, like if it plays the audio, it's going to play the audio, you know. So, but yeah, I haven't seen any problems with too big. Sometimes bigger ones are problematic, but yeah. No, I mean, we've played, when you're testing this and you need to test for 4 hours of audio, you have large 4-hour audio files. So we play comedy routines and entire albums, and yeah, we've played many large, very large audio files. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. All right, great. So that's the audio. So hopefully that you're comfortable with that. I'm just going to unplug this because I'm not. Great. Okay, so anyone have a time check? Where are we? We're at 11 o'clock. Okay, that's great. We've actually accomplished a lot. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about scripting. Now, I feel like I have to. So even though this is Finale and Cobra, I have to mention the fact that we have some other options here. And the only reason I do that is because I feel in some ways, it's a graduation. As you become more fluent with the system or with Pyromusicals, if you've never done a Pyromusical before, maybe it makes sense just to start playing around with Excel a little bit, or start playing around with our Show Creator product. When you start getting more advanced, Finale is incredible. It is awesome. I use it personally. I don't use Show Creator because I know how to use Finale, and it's a really incredible tool. You can make cake simulations within a few seconds, and I'm going to get into that stuff. But I do want to mention there's 3 different ways that you can make a script. You can make a script using Excel, which I'm going to show you. You can make a script using Cobra Show Creator, which is a very light PC program that we offer. And you can make it using Finale. In the end, all 3 of those software solutions create the same file. Same file, same format, everything's the same. It's just a different way of getting that file created. Okay? So, let's start with something really, really simple. I am going to grab my thumb drive, which is right here, and I'm going to place this into my computer. And on my thumb drive, and just for the purposes of simplicity here, I'm just going to take this, I'm going to paste this over here. And I'm just going to delete these. Okay, so we're just going to make this clean. You do not have to remove files off your thumb drive. A lot of people ask, well, I got to get rid of everything. You don't. You can have whatever you want on there. Just for simplicity, I'm going to put this on here now. If you open a CSV file, that stands for comma separated values. What that means is that if you were to open this, I'm not sure if people are familiar with Notepad, but Notepad is a very basic editor within Windows, and it just shows you the raw file. This is what the script file looks like in its most raw form, and it contains information, primarily the events, what's going to fire and when. This same CSV file, if you open it in Microsoft Excel, it looks a little bit cleaner. They kind of make it into nice little columns here, and I'm going to show you this here. So I'm just going to double click on these just to kind of make it look a little better for us. Great. Okay, so this is what the script file looks like in Microsoft Excel. Basically, there's 2 sections of the script. There's what we call the header, which is right here. These 2 rows, this is the header row. And then everything underneath this is what we call the body. And the body are the individual events that you are going to fire. In the header row, there's 4 pieces of information. In fact, there's actually 5, which I'll explain in a second. But there's 4 pieces of information. The first piece of information, which is here, this is your trigger channel. This is your trigger button. So what is your trigger channel and your trigger button? It is the button that you're going to press on a specific channel that's going to start the show. So Cobra has channels 0 to 99, it has 100 channels. When you turn on the remote and it first starts up, it starts off on channel 1, okay? I usually like to put my trigger channel on a channel that's something that's not 1, so I have to actively go there. I like to use 99 because normally when you're scripting, you start with channel 0 or you start with channel 1. Normally you don't have anything on channel 99, so that makes it so if you're armed, you don't accidentally hit the button and start your show. So I like to use trigger channel 99, trigger button 1. Finale, when Finale exports, it uses channel 0, cue number 1 by default. So that's your trigger channel, that's your trigger button. The confirmation button isn't really used that much, but what it is you can add another button, so you have to press 2 buttons at the same time to start your show. So you could have your confirmation button be like number 18. So you have to press 1 and 18 at the same time. The problem I have with the confirmation button is that you kind of have to hit it at the same time. So if you fumble and you miss one, you could possibly fire off a cue. Or, especially if you're trying to start the audio at the same time and you don't have the audio box, you could start your audio but not start your show. So for me, I just like putting it on a different channel that I don't normally go to. It's my safety. I don't use the confirmation button that much. In fact, we're going to we're actually replacing that with a what's going to be a dead man button in our 3.1 release, so that you have to hold the button down while the show is firing. And that's our first step into the dead man world. The return channel is once the script is done, what channel does the remote go back to? Really not that important for pyro musicals because when the show's done, you usually just turn off the controller. However, for semi-auto scripting, which I don't know how much of that I'll get into today, the system is used in a lot of play productions, movie environments where you may have a scene where there's 4 or 5 different little mini scripts that you need to fire. So you hit a button and it hits a bunch of things. When you want that script to finish, instead of ending on channel 6, you want it to come back to 99 so you can hit button 2, which is your next little mini script. So with the return channel, you can actually have the script fire, go to a certain channel, fire another script, it goes to another channel. You may want to go to a different channel and you want to manually fire. So anyway, it's a neat feature, but that's what it does. When the script's over, it goes to that channel. Then, below this, these are all of your events, which is pretty straightforward. It's what channel and cue do you want to fire? So here we have a module. This one's on, I think this is on channel 3. Which one of these cues do you want to have fire? When, right? Hours, minutes, seconds. So 0:00:02.0s. That's 2 seconds. So it's the first set of zeros is the hour, the second is the minutes, the third is the seconds. When you do get to 60 seconds, instead of going to 60, go to 1 minute and 0 seconds, okay? These are always ascending. The finale will always ascend the ignition time, the event times. Our remote will not like it if you give it a file that's not ascending. Not because we couldn't support it, but mainly people make mistakes in their times and they don't realize that they made something earlier. So instead of us just kind of accepting it and firing it early, we actually air out because chances are you probably made a mistake when you put that in there. So these are all in ascending order. And then you also have a description. And that description is just informational. Your own little note of what you're firing at that time. If you have 2 events that you want to fire at the exact same time, have 2 rows with the exact same time. It's that simple. And so really, that's it. It's just what button and channel do I press to start the show? When the show's finished, what channel does it go to? And what are all the events, the times, the channel, the cue, and the description? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Any questions on what a basic script looks like? Go ahead.
I guess maybe you get into this in a more advanced script, but if you're doing multiple scripts like we were talking about,
Great question. Okay, so the question is that you can, well, I'll correct that, but the question was that you can only load one script into the remote. How would you possibly do multiple scripts? Correct? Okay, so you can actually load more than one script into the remote. It's not just one. You can only load one file. Now, in the file though, so I'll give you an example. I'm just going to delete out a bunch of these rows just to make this a lot smaller. So I'm just going to go here to Excel. I'm going to highlight all these. I'm going to right click and I'm going to delete these. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Notice on the last line there's the word end. We always need that, and that's in case you pull that thumb drive out early while you're loading it and you don't know it. The script's like, the remote's like, yeah, we're cool. We loaded half the events, but you didn't know that. So the reason we put the end at the end is that when we see that end, the remote's like, we're done. And if we don't see it, we're going to throw an error code. So that's why it's important to have the word end if you pull out the thumb drive too early. So what you can do is you can copy, and again, this is all in Excel, you can copy this script. So this is just a real simple script. And I can then right click here, and I can paste that in here. So now what you're seeing, I lost my word again, I'll put that back. I now have two scripts. But maybe what I want to do here is I want to make this my trigger button too. And these obviously are going to probably be different channels, right? Something like that. So what this is this is two scripts within a single file, okay? And one of the details with this that's really important, today in the 18R2, in our 3.0 firmware release, we added the ability for you to fire unlimited channels at the same time. It was a very large change for us to support that because it actually uploads the scripts into the modules in advance and then it fires them off of a timecode feed. And so only the first script in the file today supports that feature. Okay, so if you do make multiple scripts, like I don't recommend, sometimes people make multiple scripts for different songs. So you fire your first script and that's the first song on your show, and then you fire the second script, that's the second song on your show. I don't recommend that. I recommend that you just simply create one script, one audio file, instead of multiple scripts. And there's ways, if you need ways where you need to pause the script automatically, there's ways that I can explain that in a step scripting functionality, which I probably won't cover today, but it's pretty cool. So there's a lot of neat things you can do right now.
So it'll fire to the first script
and stop.
The trigger channel, and that's better to stop.
It'll stop, exactly. And so what you would normally do here is here you would probably have your return channel be 99. So when it finishes the first script, it goes back to 99. Otherwise, it's going to either be on 0 or it's going to stay on 2. So you have to go back down to 99 to hit it. So in this case, it'll go back automatically. Okay. All right, so that's the first example. And now to save this, what you do is you just hit File. And let's see, so I'm going to hit File. I'm going to click Save As. And we have a little video of this on the website. And you go right to your thumb drive, and I just double click on Cobra, say yes. I get this question so much. What is this? What is this message? It's basically just saying that it's not an Excel file, so you lose all the formatting, like the column lists and things like that. So just click yes, that's all you need to do. And that saved it to my thumb drive. I take my thumb drive out, I turn on my 18R2. You can put it in before you turn it on, you can put it in after you turn it on, it doesn't care. And you take this, and you stick this into the unit, like that. I don't know if you saw that, but it spins the LEDs. I just loaded this here. Yeah. Oh, this is the 3.12 release. That's actually a bug. The engaging and the disengaging of the USB doesn't work in 3.02 after I started. In 3.03 it works perfect, but we're fixing that. Okay, so anyway, you saw it load. It goes all green when it loads. Okay, if it goes all red and it starts spitting out a bunch of stuff that's really confusing you, it didn't load properly. And those are actually the error codes. And so what it does is it shows the ER on the top. And then on the bottom, it tells you what the code is. So it would say something like ER7 as an example. And then it would tell you what the line number is. And if you have more than one error code, or more than one problem in your script, it's going to keep doing that. And so there's a little laminated sheet of paper that we send you on the back of it that has a listing of all the error codes and what the problem is. Or you can call me. I support a lot of error code I know, I think I know them all. All right, so that's how you load it, and then you arm the system. And I don't think we have anything on, that's okay. And in this case, so we had our channel 99 and trigger button 1. So we're just gonna press this, and you can see here on the bottom, it's doing stuff. So it's firing cues, and it's done. There you go. So, and you saw it actually return to channel 99. If hit 2, it'll start the next script. Okay. So that's how you load it. You save it from Excel to your thumb drive, you stick that into the 18R2, it loads it, you see all green, and then again, dry run, should go. Not because there's a problem with the system, but because maybe you didn't save that file to the thumb drive. Okay.
How do you provide software updates for the controller?
Great question. I'll give you the really short answer, and we can go into it further. But the short answer is that we have them for free that you can download off the website. We send them out in a newsletter, and then you use a little device to do it from your computer. So, yeah. The key is you don't have to send it back to us, and you don't have to pay for it, with the exception of the little transceiver. And that's actually unique in the industry. So. We don't charge for that, for both the software and the service. So.
Is Matt for upgrade the Starfire?
No. I don't know. I'll let them go through their process in their seminar.
It was an all-day process.
Okay. So I want to briefly show Cobra Show Creator, and this is actually going to go pretty quick here because there's not a lot to it, and we'll jump into the finale. Show Creator? It's a really neat software. We're coming out with a very cool release. It's called, now that you're here, if you're physically near me, I'm very apt to talk about new things that we're doing and over email, just saying. We're adding a cool function now, it's called Show Share. It's really neat. It's, you have the ability to share shows with anyone. It's mainly for people that are working together editing shows. You don't have to constantly send files back and forth. And it's really neat. You can make shows public. And anyway, Benny, who's the developer for Cobra Show Creator, does a wonderful job for building this software. Yeah, good guy. This is now currently uploading the new version from my cell phone that's connecting through there. So this could actually take some time. All right, I'm just going to let that load because I'm afraid that's going to actually take a little while. So let's go into, we'll come back to that. Let's actually go into finale. So we got about 45 minutes. Oh, this is going to sit up here the whole time. You know what I can do? Try something. I'm pretty sure if I disable my wireless. Just bear with me 2 seconds. No, I can get rid of it. I actually want this to stop doing what it's doing, and it will operate in an offline mode. It didn't like that because okay, so it's done. Okay, I'm not sure why that's doing that. This is actually the new version that I'm running. Okay, so I'll have to fix that. Only guess what it is. Okay, so we'll go to finale. In summary, Show Creator, it basically looks like Excel, but it has all of the error checking built into it. Okay, you can also load a music file into it, similar to what you're going to see within Finale, and you can click on the different parts of the music and you can add cues. And you can define your trigger channel and your trigger button in a nice clean interface. It's not like you have to figure out which cell to put it in. You can make your own little database of My Fireworks that you can use. You can play YouTube videos within it. So it's a very, very, very light version of Finale. Not meant to compete with Finale, but really, if we didn't have that, it's either Finale or Excel. So it sits in the middle. It's a really neat little piece of software. You can download a free demo off our website. We honestly don't really make much money off of it. It's just there as a kind of a necessity to have it. So. $50. So, yeah. Okay, so Finale. Finale is basically a full-blown visual choreography software. It's actually a very deep software. It's actually, once you get a hang of it, it's also a very easy to use software. I actually use it over Show Creator just because I am capable of using it and I own the software. It costs, it's $750. If you buy it with the 18R2, it's $650. So we do provide a $100 discount if you get it with the 18R2. And the big difference between Finale and other systems is that it's visual in. It's not like if you've used some of the other different firing systems, they have their own proprietary software similar to Show Creator. It's very Excel-like. You're in a spreadsheet all the time. And then, yeah, they may have a visual component, but that's over here. With Finale, it's much more visually driven. The idea is that you're designing your show, you're seeing your show, and then the end result of that is the spreadsheet. Sure, you can go in and you can edit it, but if it looks good in Finale, it should look good during your show. So it's very much a visual program. And it works in the sense of dragging and dropping and things of that nature. So when you first launch Finale, and you can actually download a demo of this right off the site without paying for it. Within the software itself, you can click on Show, and you can add your music. And you don't need to create a music file. You can actually create a show without music, but you can set music. And what you would do is you click on Add New Music File, and you need to be online. Okay, so you do need to be online if you want to use that option. So we're going to choose one of their pre-established audio files, which is the 1812 Overture. And if you're anything to fireworks, you're probably sick of that song, right? So it's okay, it's a good song. All right, so what happens when you load the audio file, and can you guys see this? Okay, can everyone see that okay? This down here, this is your waveform. So similar to Audacity where you have the time frame, down here you can see that this is the time within the show. So like this is 50 seconds, 45 seconds. Similar to Audacity, you can also come down here and you can zoom back and forth. So this is your whole audio show, or your whole audio file down here. You can also click on these little things here, and you can actually zoom in and out, which is really, really cool. It's actually, I find it much easier to do this than on Audacity. Okay, so if you go to the beginning of the song, and you can kind of click on this, and you can zoom really right into any area of the audio. You can play that audio just by hitting play. The space bar starts and stops, so that's a little trick that's really helpful when you're playing with it. And basically what you can do is within here, so let's say we're playing here. And when you're playing that, you can actually add effects while it's playing. So you'll see here, this little dot, that's a position. Positions are very important when you're doing shows because the position really represents fireworks and equipment that's unique to that position. Designing, I'm sure you can ask Dane. Dane, he likes lots of positions. Some people like fewer positions. So I think the key is, and I'll give you an example. I personally, and everyone has their own personal preference, there's no hard set rule. I personally like to create positions for the fronts, for the comets, for the mines, for the strobe pots, for the flame pots, any of those closer proximity ground effects. I like to create those as unique positions. So for example, let's go ahead and actually just do that for fun. So I'm going to click on Show, and you'll see there's the option to add a launch position, which is also Control L. And so you can click Control L, and that's going to add a second position. If you click it again, it's going to add a third position. Now, using this little vertical zooming tool, you can kind of zoom in or zoom out, okay? And if you saw there, like, if there's fireworks in here, you would also see you'd be zooming into the fireworks. But so I can kind of zoom down here just to space these out a little bit. You can grab positions and you can move them, distances, okay? And so I can say, set this, about 30 meters in this direction. I can set this, say about 30 meters in that direction. You can name these positions. If you right-click on the position, and in the upper right-hand corner, you click on Edit Properties, you can call this something. So I'm going to call this front right. Okay? With right being the perspective of the audience. And that was actually my center. Nice. Okay, center. So we'll call this front center. Okay. And hit that, and we'll just go ahead and we'll call this one front right. And we'll call this one front left. And I think it's important to put a lot of thought into your positions when you name them. You want to make them easy to understand. So when you have someone who's helping you in your show and they see the word front center, they know that's the front center. They don't see FR-C something. Sorry, Dave. So that small thing, but a really important thing. Okay, now what's really cool within Finale is, and this is standard within the business, is you can go to what's called a bird's eye view. So you'll see there's all these little viewing options here. If I click on bird's eye view, it now gives me a top-down aerial view of my shoot site. And that same zooming capability also exists within the bird's eye view. You can add additional positions. So I'm going to do Control L. That put a position over here. I'm going to go ahead and, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put this here. I'm going to put this here. And let's just put this right here. Put this right here. And then I'm going to put this one here. And we'll use these, I guess, for maybe our cake positions, right? So if I edit this, maybe I'll call this mid center. I think that was center. I don't know what was that? Okay. So this is mid-center, and I can change this to right-click. We'll call this mid-right. And I'll end with this last one here, just so we don't spend a lot of time creating positions. So this is mid-left. Great. Okay. So now I have a 6-position show. And in my middle positions, I'm just going to we're just going to assume this is a consumer show. Because tonight we're going to do a show. You guys are more than happy to help. We've actually designed a show that we're going to set up. It uses 4 modules, and it's meant just to illustrate how you can do a really cool 5-minute show with 4 modules. And so, and I'll show you that show before we leave here. And so I've added 5 different positions, and I'm just going to go back, and I'm going to go back to turn off my bird's eye view, which is also Control B, so you can turn it off. And so now you can see that those are kind of visually represented. Now, unfortunately with this song, it's tough to find good crescendos, but let's see what we can do. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. Okay, so I heard something here. So there was like a dun, dun, dun. So here. Okay, so let's try to put some comments to that. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of zoom in here real tight, and I'm going to replay that audio. And so you can kind of, I think it feels like it's about here for that first beat. So we'll just kind of go here for fun. And we're going to click on the position that we want to add an effect to, for example, front left. And you'll see up here at the top that Finale has kind of a series of different pre-established effects, different comments, different shells, cakes, things of that nature. And so for this first part of the demonstration, I'm just going to use comments. Now, the nice thing is let's say there's a certain comment that Kellner sells that isn't in the system. no problem, you can choose from one of the effects that they already have within here, or you can actually add that effect, which I'm going to show you a little bit later. We're just going to assume that this is product that the Kellner's has, which they very well probably do, and I'm going to choose this comment. And all you do is you just simply click on the effect. And when you've done that, it actually puts that effect right into the position that you were editing. And once that effect goes in there, you can actually click on it and you can drag it around. We can control the angle of that. So I'm going to have that fire at a 30-degree angle to the right. Okay? And we're going to go back and let's just see how this looks. Okay, so we kind of heard that. I think it hit pretty good. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click here, which is I think maybe the second part of that. I'm going to click on my front right position, and I'm going to add that same comment. And this time I'm going to angle it to the left, about 30 degrees. And so we'll go back here, and then let's play that again. Great. And so you can kind of see that we're building a little bit of, and we'll do that again. Now, right about here is where I think it's a little bit more of a crescendo. Now, in this case, I'm actually going to click on my front left position. I'm going to hold down my control key, okay? And actually, it may actually be the shift key in Finale. It is. You're going to hold down the shift key, and we're going to choose all three of those positions. And now I'm going to, in this case, we're going to stick that same comment, and I'm going to click on it. And in this case, it actually added all three comments, or added a comment to all three positions. And I'm just going to even zoom in here just so we can kind of see this a little bit better. So now if we go back, and so what we did there is we created just kind of a really neat visual effect with 6 comments. And we were able to replay it, go back and forth, kind of get it right. If you feel, like let's say that we felt like that first hit was just a little bit off, I can go in here and I can actually slide this forward or backwards right within this time frame, okay? So, and I'm like, you know what, that feels about right. And that type of precision is really important, and the idea is that you're looking at the effect, you're seeing it fire, and if it looks good in Finale, it should be fine within the script. All of this visualization stuff, the dragging, the dropping, the sliding, none of this can be done in Show Creator. So Finale is this is what they're brilliant in doing, and especially if you're with Finale, if you're looking at this from a corporate perspective, if you sell shows, if you're a display company, you can actually make videos from this. You can send that video to the client. You can see what the actual show is going to look like. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do here, and this is a really cool feature of Finale. So I'm just going to go to this part of the segment. And now let's say I want to put some cakes into this show, okay? And let's imagine that you go into the cake section and you can't really find what you're looking for. This is an effect that just doesn't exist within Finale today. What you can do is recently, well, actually probably about maybe 6 months to a year ago, Finale released a feature which is a simulation feature where you can create the new simulation using a simple phrase. Prior to them having this, they had, it wasn't too difficult to use, but some could argue that it was like a 747 dashboard. This thing had every dot and I in the world, and you had to kind of tune it to get the effect that you wanted. And people became very good at it, but it certainly had a learning curve and wasn't, necessarily, the best option. This search phrase capability is really, really cool. So let's say I wanted to create like 30 seconds falling leaf, gold, let's say 20 shot cake, right? You can just type that information in, and I could do that any way that I wanted. Let's say it was 22 shot gold cake falling leaves, right? Type it in however you want, and what that does, and let's say this was 2-inch, not a 3-inch. And so it translates that into the nearest match, which is what's down here. And once you've done that, you just simply click Insert into Show, and now I can go ahead and put my animation. And Now there's my probably way too rapid falling leaf cake, which that was terrible. I didn't like that. I didn't fan it. So let's go back. Let's try that again. So let's go back into effects. Let's make a simulation. Let's make it fanned, and let's try it again. So for fan, there we go. So let's try this as a fan effect. And why not? Let's make it 4-inch because there's a lot of 4-inch. Oh yeah. There we go. That's much more dramatic. Okay. So that was pretty cool. And it's not just for things like that. If you just wanted to do a simple, like a red peony, 30 shot, 30 second, cake, you can just go in here and actually that's a lot of shots in 10 seconds. We'll go with more like 12. There we go. And so we can do something like this. Okay, simple 12 shot, 30 second cake. And so if you have different consumer cakes that kind of what they look like and you're able to pretty much describe them, you can go in there, you can create the simulation, you can add it into Finale. Once you've added it, you can even add it into your inventory. So you can actually put this directly into your fireworks. So you can go to My Fireworks and you can say save selected simulation as a new effect. You can create this, it goes in your library, and then it becomes available within some of the choices that you have within the top of the user interface. And so, even though, because, if anyone knows we did this Wiki Fireworks project, there are so many consumer cakes. There's like thousands upon thousands of them, and they're constantly changing. If you know what you want, you can create it, and you can enter it into the software. Yes?
You know, if you can go into like a Kellner catalog online and drag and drop the description right into it?
Yeah, very possibly. So, I think, yeah, I'm sure you can do that. So, and play with it, and I think it's something that you become familiar with it. But you can see with the speed of it, it's fast. So go ahead, Raylan. Got it. Okay, so on the Finale website, they have a section which explains, so the short answer is that you can absolutely create that using that text capability. I'm not an expert in it, but online they have a very nice web page that explains it with examples. So, great. Okay. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and I'm just going to open an existing show just to show you what, and in fact I believe this is what we've actually gone ahead and created that we're going to fire. So let's add a music file. Oh, darn. Okay, let's try to go online here.
If you're using consumer fireworks, how do you compensate for wick time?
That's a great question. Okay, so let me just do this really quick and then I'll answer that. Well, I'll tell you this. What I would suggest if you have access to eMatch is to put an eMatch, basically cut the cake open, take out that fuse and stick an eMatch right into the black powder. That's going to create the best timing. Now, if you don't, and in that case you would have a very small pre-fire time. So, and I'll show you this, but in Finale there's what's called pre-fire time, which is basically the amount of time that you're expecting from the point in which the ignition occurs to the point in which the effect is launched. Okay, now that's different from the lift time, which is the time it takes, for example, for a shell from the time of the ignition to the actual burst. So pre-fire times, if you're using consumer product, and let's say that you're using Talon igniter clips, and you can set, for example, maybe a 1 or 1.5 second pre-fire time, so that in your show, when you're looking at it, it looks nice, the effect starts at the right time. When you have the pre-fire time within Finale, when it creates the export script, it's going to subtract off that 1.5 seconds, so that when it actually fires, it fires 1.5 seconds early, and then the effect starts hopefully at about the right time. So, and I'm pretty sure in Finale, what you can do is, this is right here. See how this up here? So I did what's called a firing view. So if you click on File, and you go to the firing view, And again, these are the bird's eye view, inventory view, equipment view. This is the firing view. Within here, you can kind of widen this out. Now it starts to look a little bit more like Excel. And there's all these columns, and you don't really have to worry about much of this. But here, this PFT column, that's your pre-fire time. And I'm pretty sure if you click on this, and so what you can do in here is you can actually select these effects. So you click on this little checkbox here. Or if you wanted to, you could select a specific effect, right? Or use your shift key to select more than one effect. You go to actions, and you can go to change pre-fire, and you can type in exactly what that pre-fire time is. So let's assume you were using all cakes, all talent igniter clips. You would probably check all of your effects and put in a pre-fire time of maybe a second, something like that. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so this here, this is the, now I just went online, so hopefully now I can add my music. Let's try this again. I believe I'm online. I believe I didn't do this. I may need to restart Finale. Okay. Okay, Finale. Okay, let's try it again. That's the same password on my luggage. Is that funny? I am not funny. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, it really does this to me. Okay, so here's the show. There we go. And we're going to cross our fingers here. Yay. Okay, I believe this is it. Maybe that's all. I think that's the on invention. Oh, this is it. Okay. So here, this is, I think, a really neat. So we have 4 positions. That's our bird's eye view, right? Super simple. 4 positions, 4 modules. That's it. That's all we have within the show. Now Howard. So props to Howard Prada for putting this together. He did this free of charge. This was a nice thing to do, which is wonderful. He put together this show, and what's cool about it is that he didn't have a lot of the simulations, and and I asked him to do it, and he did it. So what you're going to see in here, some of these are placeholders. They're not actually the effects. So I think when you see the show tonight, it's actually going to look a little bit better than what we're seeing here within Finale. But the great thing is he was able to put in those effects. He was able to align them, get the timing on cue. And so we're just going to go ahead and we're going to, I guess we'll just watch the show here in Finale. So this is going to be our show for tonight. The Bird of Fire. This is all using Kellner's products too. Just so you know. So,
That's awesome. Howard.
yeah, it was wonderful. Good job, Howard. So he's not here, he couldn't make it, but we'll give him a round of applause. But what's really nice about that show is it's 4 modules. I mean, you could have the equipment with the audio box and do that with, probably, what, $1,500 or $1,800 worth of equipment. And that's a wonderful show. I mean, I just think it's really cool that you're able to do stuff like that, especially with the Kellner's product. So, great. Now, okay, so that's the show. So that was kind of like a fast forward. We just designed that in the last 10 minutes. Now, what you're going to do within Finale is a couple things. In the show column, there's a button here that says Readdress Shows. When you click on this, what it's going to do is it's going to automatically assign all of the cues and the channels to the show for you. And within like Show Creator, you actually have to manually go and you have to type all that stuff in. Within Finale, it does it for you automatically. And so when you click Readdress Show, and then you click OK, it's going to address everything, and then it's going to tell you, you need 4 modules, right? Which is really neat because it's telling you exactly the equipment that you need. On top of that, if you go to the equipment view, so again, within File, we've got our different views over here. We go to the equipment view, and we expand this down. What you're going to see here is that it's kind of tough to read, but these are your positions, position 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're using 1 module in position 1. 17 out of 18 of your pins are being used. They use the term pins and address. Address is the same as channel, Q is the same as pin in Cobra world. So 17 out of 18 pins are used, 18 out of 18, 17 out of 18, and actually within position 4, we're only using 6 out of 18 cues. So we're not even fully using all the equipment that we have. So this is a really nice way for you to see what positions you may have availability. So at this point, I may say, you know what, I've designed this show, man, I still have 12 cues in position 4, which is this back position. Let's go back into the show and let's add some more product to that because I do have that equipment available. So this equipment view is really nice to see what you have, what you don't have, and what you can do. And so at any point in time, you can readdress your show and you can print things out. Now, when your show is done, there's a couple things you can do. Labels are awesome. We didn't actually generate labels for our show. We're just going to hand write on the markers. But what you can do is you can generate sticky labels that you can print out on a standard Avery paper format. And those labels are going to contain information that you're going to put on each of the effects, whether it's the cape, whether it's the shell, whether it's the comet. And that is going to tell you what the channel is, it's going to tell you what the cue is. If it's a comet, it's going to tell you exactly what angle you need to set it up as, right on that little label. So the labels are super handy versus having to go back to a sheet of paper and figure out, okay, what angle is this in, how am I going to do it? So labels are really neat. And so what you can do is you can just simply create the labels. It'll make a simple PDF file, and voila. You print this right to your printer, and make sure that if you bought it at Staples or Office Max, that you're choosing the right printer type or the printer paper, and this gets printed out. So here it tells you, it says this is these are the Kellner's, the boss effects. It's a cake. This is the position that it's on. This is the caliber. This is the angle. That's the channel. That's the cue. You stick it on the effect before your show. Like what we're going to do with these 4 positions, we're going to gather all of this product. And we're going to put everything that needs to be on position 1 and position 1, everything that needs to be on position 2 and position 2, and then as a team, whoever wants to help out, we're going to go over there, and we're just going to simply plug it right into the field module. That's it. And so the labels are really helpful. And then, in addition to the labels, you go to print report, and there's a whole bunch of different reports that you can print. There's a couple that are really important. Probably the most important is what's called the Rail Cue Report. And so you can click on Create Report, and I already have these saved, but I'm just going to overwrite my Cue Rail Report. It's going to bring it up. And what the Cue Rail Report is And we also have this in Show Creator. So we also have we have labels in Show Creator, we also have the reports in Show Creator, but the Rail Queue report is a listing of every single piece of product that is going to go in your show. And for each piece of product, it tells you exactly which module and what pin to connect it to. So in this case, in Cobra Roll, that's actually channel. Module is the equivalent of channel, pin is the equivalent of queue, and it sorts it. So someone may come up to you and say, hey, I'm working on channel 3, I don't have anything for 5. There's nothing for 5. Or this thing says 5, but I already got something plugged into 5. You take this report, and you go, and I have 3 copies of this printed out for the show, and someone can easily quickly scroll down and say, 5 should be this. And they say, oh man, someone stuck the wrong sticky label on it. That's wrong. Move it over to this one. So this is a really helpful report to have available on hand at the show. Other reports that you can create, the pull sheet is really cool. So the pull sheet, especially, so this is something that we would use. This is telling you exactly what item, and this is more listed by item, exactly what item goes to what pin and what address. And this is more of like an item level view. And it tells you how many totals you have for each of them. And also, if we go to the show summary report, which is really nice. And so we'll go to show summary, bring this up. And this is also a nice sheet for when you need to get your product. So it tells you exactly how many items, all the items that you need. So these are all the items that we're going to use in the show. It tells me how many there are. It tells me what the caliber of them are. How many require mortars, how many don't. So I know right now that I have 18 devices that require a mortar. Those are probably 1 3/4 inch canister shells. So I think Dane brought a rack. So we know that we need a rack that's going to support at least 18 mortars. Now what's cool is that actually some of those are 2 inch, some of those are small. These are probably all 1 3/4 inch. But if you're doing a larger show where you have 5, 6, 7s, 8s, 10s, 12s, this is like critical information. And also there's reports that deal with the racking of systems. And that's where Finale just really does an amazing job. You can simply just go in, you can set your rack preferences. So you go in, you say, okay, my racks happen to be, for my 5s, I've got 5 mortars per rack, right? And maybe for my 3s it's 10. And when you do this, and you save this, and you generate those reports, it'll generate an equipment report. So you go out and you say, I need to pull this many racks. And so it's really cool. So you can configure this, you can change it on the fly if you need to. And that's where Finale really, really excels, is within all the different reports. They even have reports around the site layout, all different kinds of different things that you can do. Okay, trying to think if there's other things that I can go into here without causing too much confusion. What's that? Right, okay, so Dane can attest to this. So when you print your reports and your labels, don't change your show. Especially the entire 3 weeks leading into the show, Dane. Just kidding. It was an awesome show.
We're salutes, come on.
Because when you change your show, Finale, and the best way I can describe it, the worst case of describing it is that they Rubik's Cube all of your channels and your cues. So imagine going out there, spending all this time setting up your show, starting your show, and expecting 3 comments to hit. And all of a sudden you have 2 cakes and another cake that have nothing to do with each other firing. Right? And then a comment hits, and then you have dead space for 30 seconds. So, and it's actually really easy to do. All you do is you go up to show, and I can change my addressing options where I choose to sort this. Basically, this is just a different way of Rubik's cubing all of your content, or all your events. So when you print everything out, all your labels, all your reports, export your script at the exact same time. And if you're going to make a change, you can definitely make changes. I just suggest making changes to the script. Open that file in Excel, because then you know what damage you're doing, right? Versus making the change in Finale and not knowing what's going to come out the back end of it. So making the changes, hand write on the report, cross off the comment, and write a new name for the comment that you want to go in there. Go into the Excel file, change that address and channel, change the time. And that's probably the best way to do it, and minimize it. And then also when you're doing your dry runs, do your dry run. If your last cue to fire in the show is channel 12 Q3, and it's supposed to be a certain type of a comet, check the label and make sure that on that comet it says channel 12 Q3, make sure the last cue that fires in your show is channel 12 Q3, and make sure everything matches up. And if you do a little sample of maybe 2 or 3 different effects and all that's matching up, then you should be in good shape, you know what I mean? And so it's critical to check, recheck everything that you're doing. Okay. Other things, because I know we've got we're going to break at lunch in about 8 minutes. Some of the stuff I didn't get into within Finale, and we'll talk about this afternoon in a second. There's all kinds of really cool things you can do here. Like if you remember watching that Mexican show, they had these like kind of parabolic comet chases that would go up to the right and they'd sweep, and then they'd sweep up to the left, and then they'd come into the center, and then they would go in and they would go out. That can be time consuming over a lot of positions to set that up, to get the angles right, to get the times right, to adjust everything just perfectly with a 1/10 of a second offset or a 20-second offset. In Finale, you can easily go in and add a bunch of positions, add a bunch of effects to those, highlight them all, and click 2 or 3 buttons, and instantly you've got a parabolic sweeping comet chase. And it looks perfect, and the file's perfect. So that's something we can cover, I think, this afternoon if people want to get into it, is there's a lot of tools within Finale that make creating those really advanced effects pretty easy to do. Click here, and here they are. So these are all the firing systems. So you would go in your preferences, and there's Cobra hanging out at the top. And anyway, these are all the different systems. So you can choose it right here. And also, if you go to show, you can also set your firing system here. Now what's also cool is when you set your firing system here, you can click on customize, and you can choose the name of the module. I don't know why it defaults to R2. You can also tell if I'm anal, sometimes you're like, I want my channels to start at 1, not 0. You can do that. So you can change that from 0 to 0 to 0 to 1. You can also set this to max E-matches per pin. If you're doing E-matching and you're doing stuff in series, I would recommend changing that to 10, because that's our max in series. And then the system's smart enough where 2 things fire at the same time, it actually combines them into the same queue. But if it's over 10, it's going to move them to a different queue. So anyway, did that answer your question? Frank?
Maybe it's that familiar, a little complex now, but can you show us how we do the slats? And there are 2 positions, but it's 1 mod.
Okay, right. I'm not using slats in today's show, but for those who aren't familiar, we have a product called a slat. And a slat is not anything new to the industry. It's just an electronic board that you can plug cues into, and it's kind of a, for lack of a better term, it's just a dumb board. It just has a connector that goes to it, and when electricity goes in, it fires a specific cue. Cobra, you can outfit a firing module with a thing called a slat connector, and it basically just replaces this third bay down here with a connector, a DB25 connector, that can, you can take a cable and plug it into the module, and on the other end of the cable it plugs into a slat, or potentially multiple slats. So you can go slat, cable, slat, cable, slat, cable. And when the module fires, the slat fires at the exact same time as the module. So it's not like you're gaining extra cues, necessarily unique events, unique hits, but you're simply, it's a big time saving versus having to wire multiple positions, or scab multiple positions that are far away that are firing at the same time. That probably didn't make any sense, but how you would set that up within Finale is, let's say that I had positions 1, 2, and 3 all on that position 1 was a module, position 2 was a slat, position 3 was a slat, and they were all cabled together, and they all hit at the exact same time. What you would do is you go into position 1, you right-click on it, which is the same thing that you do when you want to change the name. You edit the modules, and in this case, it's actually got this one defined, which is address 0. And so I'm just going to remember that in my head. That one's address 0, which is in my first position. Then I'm going to go into position 2, and I'm going to edit my module. Now, in here, I'm going to add a module, okay? And it's going to be address 0. And that's because it's the same address as the module within the first position. save that, close this out. I go back in here, and I would do the same thing to the third position. Hit model in here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add this, as it is 0, say OK. Now when I do that, this is where it gets interesting. If you're adding it afterwards, you want to go into your firing mode. Basically, you're going to lock, and this is where this is maybe something better covered this afternoon, but you lock all of your positions, you lock everything that's within there, and then you can start adding cues. And when you add one to each position, they fire at the same time, it's going to end up becoming one event within the output, which is just going to be that one left cue. So that's probably better. I can set up a simpler example, not on the show, showing that as if we were doing it from the beginning. So, any other questions? So for this afternoon, and this is really, give me your feedback, what you guys want to do. I think the plan was break to lunch, after lunch, say 1 or 2. I'm happy to get back, come back here, and let's stay in and go through anything. If you guys want to go through advanced features and finale, if you want an open session where people just come up here and I can go through the equipment, we can do that. So I figure maybe what we'll do is we'll plan on coming back at say 1:30, and we'll just leave it open. And so if anyone has any ideas or questions, I know in the past, when I open up for Q&A, it can actually go through a lot of different questions. People talking about signal interference or other different best practices or things that we're planning or working on. So we'll see you back here at 1:30. And then also, if you don't come to the 1:30 session, I would say about 3:30, meet us out in the field and you can help us set up the show. Okay? Should be fun. Well, thank you so much. 42. So, thank you all for returning and listening to me. So, I don't have an agenda for this. So, we could just open it up to general questions and I can answer those questions and that might help everyone as a whole. Or I'm happy to go into anything within finale. So I don't know if anyone has any suggestions. If not, I can throw out some ideas and we can raise our hands and vote. Wiki, okay, yeah, I can mention that. So I have a new project that I started probably about 2 years ago. And it's called wikifireworks.com. And it's a website that is similar to Wikipedia, where you can contribute content. Basically, the public, in many ways, owns that content and maintains that content. Wiki Fireworks is a publicly maintained consumer fireworks database that today has upwards of probably around 9,000 different individual fireworks across multi-shot cakes. I believe there's at least 3,000 to 4,000 multi-shot cakes across a whole variety of different brands, and we're adding more to it every day. We are contributing and changing the functionality of it, and so basically it's a resource where you can find consumer fireworks, and if you want to help contribute to that content, we appreciate that as well. Just because today online there's really no single source for finding consumer fireworks or being able to quickly navigate down and watch videos. And so it's something I've kind of done out of my own pocket, out of my own time. It's completely free. There's no charge to it. I think eventually we have some business models that we could tie to it, but it's really me kind of scratching an itch back from my software days, which I miss a lot. So anyway, so it's just a neat project. So check it out, it's wikifireworks.com. It's really cool. It's fun. And if you have ideas, let us know. So good. Great. So anything you guys want me to get into or go ahead? Okay, so finale inventory. Well, I'll do my best to answer that because I'm not sure I'm the best person. They definitely have, I believe they have over 5,000 individual effects within their database.
How can you incorporate that to your,
You mean, are you talking about Wiki Fireworks? Yes, that is absolutely one of the things that we want to do. And in fact, Finale has a language that they've invented for describing fireworks. In fact, that text phrase that you enter in, ultimately that gets translated into this, string of characters that represents that firework. And so our goal, eventually, once we get all the product loaded into the wiki, and once we get, guys like Frank who have been incredibly helpful in devoting their time to help out, once we get all of the content refined out, which I'm hoping in the next 6 months, we can do, and also we're still refining the user interface. We are definitely going to take on the task of getting basically that representation, that finale search phrase, placed into the wiki for every firework, which will allow us to then bring simulations of those effects into the wiki. And also, I have a very close relationship with Finale where we could support things like, if you were on the wiki site, you could just drag the cake into Finale and it just appears. And so there's all kinds of really neat places in which the wiki can go. And the great thing about it is that I have zero religion or goal as to what this thing can be. I want to truly make it a public representation of what people want. And so I have resources 100% committed to doing that. I'm paying for them, and whatever people feed at me, I'll throw at it. So yeah, I think the Finale integration is a no-brainer. I think it'll be really neat. And we can tie that into Show Creator, we can tie it into Finale, we could tie it into whatever, Sir?
When you guys are, when you start out a show in Finale, do you just arbitrarily throw launch positions in? I mean, if say somebody had like 10 modules, and this is kind of an open-ended question,
Yeah, sure.
but do you generally have an idea before you go in, or you start dropping product on the music, or
I think that's I can give you my opinion, I'm sure others can contribute. I think a lot of it depends on whether you're a display company, and like for example, if you got a contract from a client and they have a certain amount of money they want to spend, that's going to probably dictate the type of product or the amount of product that you're going to use. And you may have a standard mix that you come in with, and they may want some minor alterations to that. So I think if you're a display company, that's probably dictated by the budget and the type of show that the customer wants. If you're more of a consumer, you're doing a private show, or if you're looking to just do something really cool and different, I think a lot of that's, and again, this is just opinion, but maybe a lot of it's dictated by the product that you know, because, and obviously you're going to have a soundtrack that you're going to come up with, you're going to have a certain length of time. If you're someone that likes ground effects, like personally, I feel that ground effects, comets, mimes, flame pots, strobe pots, things like that really help to enhance the show. They can create hits on beats to build crescendos and emotion into the music. And, like for example, that Mexican show, I want to say like 80+% of that was all ground effects. There was very little in the form of aerial. I mean, there definitely was aerial, but not that much. And, and the challenge though with ground effects is it's very cue intensive, it's very equipment intensive. You've got lots of individual shots that you're firing. So I think, if you do plan on if it's a pure Class C show, maybe first you decide, okay, I definitely want to have a front. So do I want to have a front or don't I want to have a front? And by front, I mean like ground effects, closer proximity, comets, mimes, things like that. And then you can put in a couple of positions for that. If you know that you have enough product, you could have more than 3 positions. I mean, some consumer shows are, 5, 10+ positions. And then you can incorporate a position behind that, which is maybe your 500-gram cakes. You could even put a position in between that for your 200-gram cakes. Or sometimes 200-gram cakes can sit in that front position. And then obviously if you've got, larger shells, if you're doing 1, 3 and you're dropping, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, 8s, 10s, 12s, I mean, those can also dictate their own positions. So I don't know how to answer that question exactly.
Yeah, because right now I'm working on a show, and it can be kind of overwhelming. You get thinking about, what do I have to buy? How do I, how many racks do I have? How many models do I have? What do I borrow? And
yeah, one thing I think a lot of it also has to do with the soundtrack. So maybe you want to start with the soundtrack and decide, okay, how long do I want to make my show? And say you feel that 10 minutes is an appropriate time. then you could even start working on the first song and say if you had 4 songs in your 10-minute show, do the first song and see how far along you are and say, wow, I just ate up, like, okay, I gotta slow down, I can't use this many chords. So I think that's maybe something that just comes from having, doing it, or you can even start with maybe 4 positions in your front and then cut that down, or increase it if you have enough product available. And I think use cakes to your benefit. Cakes can take up a lot of time, and they're amazing in some of the effects that they can create. I mean, you could eat through 30, 45 seconds with just 3 cakes. Angle your cakes, use the cake boards where you can have them kind of fire out at angles, and just that in itself can create more, take up a lot of volume and take advantage of the space. Yeah, exactly. You're shooting where your shoot site may dictate. Because that's a great point. Because if you only have a 100-foot wide shoot site, you're not going to put 500-gram positions, because the burst of that 500-gram cake is going to start to overlap onto others, and you're going to lose the pristine, the clarity of that effect.
I set it up for full boot.
Okay.
I know the only one on the back, but the Audacity software that they're talking about for editing your audio, looks like you can download it out of the web.
Yes, I believe that Audacity is Mac friendly. And they're also very multilingual friendly.
How do I, better to put it on the Windows side of my Mac, or can I take my Mac side and put it on Windows?
I don't think, if you have your sound, if you're more comfortable in the Windows, and there's no reason, it's not like you're doing constant, I don't believe that it's common for people to make constant audio file changes as they're designing the show. So I think typically your audio soundtrack's gonna come first. You may realize that you don't have enough product for that long of a show, or that you want to take out a certain section because it doesn't make sense anymore. And in that, so I don't think there's any problem with, I would go more towards what you're comfortable with. So if you're more comfortable using Audacity in a Mac environment, just do it. Finish your soundtrack, load it in. And if for some reason you find that your style of show design involves lots of editing on the fly, then yeah, maybe you want to combine it.
If I do it on the Mac side, though, is it going to affect me using that for now?
No, so the question was, if I do create the audio in a Mac environment and export it, because I created that in a Mac environment, is that going to cause problems if I design my show in a Windows environment using Finale? And I think the answer to that is no. Yeah. Frank?
With Finale, say you have a 3-minute song in there, you want to add to it, you can't do it in show scripting software. Can you add to that? And one file, you got to add a whole one.
So if you have 2, I think the question is if you have 2 Finale files, or...
If you had a song in there and you scripted it all out, you said, okay, I want to add more. Can you add more, or do you got to add a whole other longer length of music?
So the question is, if you've designed a show in Finale and you've already loaded in your audio, and you realize that you want to add another song, what you can do is you can create a new audio file, maybe starting with your original, add the second song, export that as an MP3 file, load that into Finale. You will now see at the end of Finale that exists, and you can add to it. Now, one cool thing in Finale is if you did, let's say you had already designed 2 shows in different Finale files with different audio files, you can combine those audio files, and you can go into Finale, you can highlight all of the events, copy them, open up the original Finale file, and you can paste them in and drag them. So you don't have to manually recreate that. So it's very easy to merge and to combine Finale files.
Can you add time in our existing files, and we'll take the effects and move them, or no?
I don't believe so. I know there's some features where you can stagger effects over a defined time period, but I don't believe that it's going to spread it out accordingly. Yeah. Any other questions?
Hey Scott, I got a question.
Yes.
I'm on your website right now, so I got to order a set of replacement keys for
for my remote.
Mhm.
And I've noticed you got locking version and non-lock, so which one do I use?
When did you buy the system from us?
A year ago.
Okay, it's probably the non-locking version. If your keys had a little black
Yeah.
shell to it, it's the non-locking version.
Okay.
We had a small run where we changed our key switch and then we changed back, where it was a locking version where you had to push in and rotate.
Yeah, that's what I have to do.
Oh, you do have to push
I
in
think
and
I think
rotate.
I do.
If your key is just pure silver color and it doesn't have a black shell to it, that's the locking version.
Okay, then I ain't non-locking it. Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Okay, so that then begs the question, what do I do next? So
Can you go over the, are you gonna go over, show creators?
I can, yeah. I actually tried to start this up and
The $700, finale is just a little
yeah, let me
stretch for that.
I'm struggling loading it because we're actually testing a new version. And and it seems to be, so just bear with me for 2 seconds. Yeah. I'm just going to disable my internet and see if I can force this to load. I don't know yet. Is accurate on your okay, that's strange. Okay, I have this running. Brilliant. Thanks. Oh, did he? I thought the save was me making the software run.
I didn't want to even have to okay.
But it's on my computer right here, but it's on my screen. I know. Let's try something else. Okay, that looks terrible. Ugh, let's try this. Do you guys want to? Okay, can you guys see that okay, or if you want, there we go. Worse. Great, so this is Cobra Show Creator. Alright, how does this work? So basically what you do is similar to, so take a step back. This software allows you to create scripts, similar to Finale. It doesn't have all the capabilities. It's a much lighter, cut down version, but there is some overlap. So what you do is to create a new show, you just simply click on the File menu, and you click on New Show. It asks you the question, do you want to create the show with music or no music? And so let's say you did want to choose music, so we'll go ahead and say with music. Then you can tell the name of the show, so let's just call it Kellner's. And then it asks you to find the audio file that you want to use, so you can choose that MP3 file. And when you do that, it simply loads similar to Finale, you have the MP3 file load into the bottom of the screen. and you can play the audio. Let's see if Dane should hear. There you go. So you can play, you can pause right from this here. You can also zoom as well. So you can go and you can kind of zoom in. You can even increase the waveform here if you want to see some of the specific areas. And so you'll see here when we play this. And what we can do is to hit cues. I'll show you. I'll just hit this pause. Okay. So what I did is at certain beats within the song, I just simply click this button to add cues. And so here, what you can do is you can zoom in. And if I click on any event, it actually takes you right to that event. And so you can see here, this is the event that I clicked on, this is the event within the song. And you can actually just click over here if you want, you can play this. And so let's say that you felt that this was off slightly, this specific event, and you felt that it was a little bit early or too late. You can just double click on it, and you can change it in here. So let's say I want to change this from 16.5 seconds to say 16.1 seconds. You can save this, and that's just going to shift it. And you see that actually shifted over here a little bit. And you know, basically you can add for each of the events, no different than you would in Excel. You can put in your channels and your cues if you want. You can put in the name of the firework. It's really easy, just kind of type in whatever you want that to be. You can also put in a duration. So let's say, for example, this last item right here, we'll just put this on a specific channel cue. And let's say the duration of this is 25 seconds. So if you click here, and if I zoomed out a little bit, let's just move this over a little bit more so you can see this. Okay. So what you'll see here is this is a cake, and actually I'll type the name of this so it's a little bit better. Let's say this is my cake. I think that should be ready. There we go. So you can see this is in the waveform. This is, the red is the pre-fire time. So I think there's a question before about firing something a little bit earlier. So if you knew there was like a second and a half for that fuse to burn before the effect started going off, you can enter the pre-fire time, which in this case we've got it at 0.9 seconds. And then this right here is the actual cake, and this is the length of that cake. So if you're designing your show, you can say, okay, well, it looks like that cake ends about there, so I'm going to put my next effect right about here when that cake ends. So you could click here, and you could add another cue, it automatically puts in the time, and then you can simply go in and put in your channels and your cues and your firework name. And so it's pretty straightforward. You know, you can play the music, edit different things. What's kind of neat about the software as well is that you can also create, so if you click on options and you go to settings and you go to events, this is one of the, I think one of the coolest features of the software is you can create up to 6 custom columns within your spreadsheet. So it'd be kind of like if you were in Excel and you were adding a few extra columns that you were using for informational purposes, you can add those in here. So let's say you wanted to, I'm just going to add one column here. So I'm going to call this my position column, okay? And I'm going to save that. And up here in your position, I could say this is my left position, left, right, and you know, enter these however you want. And what's cool is that when you generate your reports, for example, or your cue reports, so let's just create a simple cue sheet here. On your cue sheet, this is what you would use in the field to help, you know, determine what goes where. It also includes that position custom column within that report. And so that would help you identify which position you want to put this in. And it may not even be position, you can create as many of those fields as you want. On top of that, when you're generating your, and we'll see if this actually works, the Avery labels, it also puts in additional custom fields. So any custom fields that you've defined on the events also appear within all of your Avery labels that you put out. So it's kind of like a poor man's way of of handling position and other things. So a lot of display companies that use this kind of like the ability to do custom columns, which is fun. This is our newer version, which includes Show Share and My Fireworks. Well, My Fireworks already existed, but the concept of My Fireworks is that you can create your own library of effects, and while you're building your show, you can just simply click on any row, and you can choose from My Fireworks and insert those into your show, which is kind of neat. There's also different types of reports. For example, there's what's called a module report, so you can actually go through each of your modules, and it'll tell you what cues are available. So if you need to know what cue or channel to put it on, or I'm sorry, what cues are available, you can choose those here. And you can also quickly determine which events don't have a cue in a channel, and I think you can also assign it from in here. And then just small stuff, easy things, like if you want to be able to define the trigger button, it brings up a picture of the remote and you can click on the button. So just kind of simple, fun things that make it easy to use within the system. So it's pretty straightforward. Hopefully does that make sense, or any questions? There's actually, it's funny because there's not any documentation, but we field very few support calls, and I think that just shows how intuitive it is. So, Frank, I guess.
Did he add anything to the timeline as far as multiple things?
Not yet. We're using a plugin called Base.net, which is, I think we've completely tapped out what that's capable of doing. And so for us to start adding multiple rows and start doing more with what Finale does, it's going to take a lot of effort to redesign and rethink that. I think long term you may see us going into stuff more with adding simple field maps, things like that. So, and I think that's the whole point of this, is the whole idea is to work. I do not ever want to try to do what Finale's doing. We just wouldn't be capable of doing it. So we're trying to just do some of the things. We have to balance out the ease of use. And so the more you start adding features, the more complicated it becomes, the more support intensive it becomes. Yeah. Not yet, but I think we may. We just, not yet. It would be cool. I agree. Yes. Lift.
The time that's shown on your display at the bottom, is that the time, event time, already calculated for the igniter time?
Yeah, so, okay, that's a good question. So the question was, so if I just zoom in here, and I think it's best to see the illustration and I'll just play this so you can hear where this is going to hit. So where that yellow bar is, the yellow bar is where the effect is going to become visible. So if you have a comet, now if I were to go into this, and I don't know which one it is, maybe let's just pick this one for no reason. And let's, not that anything really has a 1 second lift time, but let's put that in, and we'll say a half this, and then we'll say our duration is 5 seconds, which again, doesn't really make any sense. So if you go here, the red, and in fact I think if we even have a little legend that we added, there we go. This red is the pre-fire time, that's the lift time, and that's when the effect occurs. Even in the music, you want that yellow bar to be at the point that the audience is seeing it. The script, when it gets exported, the event time is going to be this right here. It's going to be whatever, 0.5. It's going to be 1.5 seconds prior to the yellow bar, or in this case, the red bar. So when we export the script, we subtract off the lift time, we subtract off the pre-fire time.
So if you do a dry run and you just watch the module fire, it's going to look like it's out of sync.
You got it. It's going to look like it's hitting early. Exactly. Lift time, some people use it for 9 and a boards. I mean, if you're shooting 1.3, a lot of that's documented. If you're shooting 1.4, YouTube videos. You just stop watching and shoot it off. I think absolutely. We can, and those are fields. I mean, I think we're adding another 5 or 6 fields. We've got shot count. We've got even the way we handle color. categorization is changing, yeah, any of that stuff. Yeah. The time that could go in there, you bet. And that's nice too, because we can tie this into the wiki. I mean, it's not a lot of effort because we own this database, we own that database. And so in my fireworks, and what's cool within the wiki is there's a tagging feature where you can actually choose the things that you may want to buy or the things that you're interested in. We can make it so that whatever you tag in the wiki, it shares the same account as what's in here. So like in our new show share functionality, we actually have created what's called a Cobra ID. So now you have a username and a password for a Cobra, and that can tie into your wiki account, it can tie into the show creator account. So when you log in, wherever you are, someone else's computer or your computer, it immediately will show your fireworks that you've defined within show creator and any of the fireworks that you may have tagged within the wiki. And so you could just choose those and put those right into the show.
Sweet.
Yes.
You have a show already created in here.
Mm-hmm.
Can you transfer it to Finale?
You can't easily transfer it to Finale. You can transfer it from Finale to this fairly easily just by using the file import cobra.csv feature. So if you even designed something in Excel a year ago, this big old long file, and you want to bring it into Show Creator, you can do it, which is nice. So we added that, I don't know, a few months ago. But not to Finale. I think they do have a generic import tool. You may just need to remap some of the columns around and massage the data to do that.
I got one more.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if you try to explain this, you understand. If you had like a 3-minute beat or music that kept that same beat count,
Mm-hmm.
and you wanted to have a hit at that same count for the whole 3 minutes, would you have to manually tag it throughout the whole 3 minutes? Is there a way, like if you had click, boom, 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 click, boom, 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 and is there a way you can like almost just tell it, yeah, loop it to put a hit at that click, boom, boom throughout the whole 3 minutes without going in and doing tagging each one?
In Show Creator, you would have to put that in there on your own. The only other, in Finale you can definitely do that in Finale using their staggering feature. In Show Creator you couldn't. The only other, let's say that was actually drawn out for like 10 minutes and truly you had like 100 or 200 different hits that you wanted. What I would probably do is take an Excel file, create it in Excel, copy those cells and do some type of a simple time formula, then import the show into Show Creator. That would be the only other workaround I can think of. But not, unfortunately, not within the software now.
Within the architecture that's in the software now, are you able to do that timeline as well?
You're talking about by expanding this?
Yeah, by showing the duration all of
Yeah. I think we need to finish off the show shared, because the show sharing and the My Fireworks and bringing that into our cloud is a huge foundational piece that has a lot of broad components. Once we finish that foundation, then I think we're going to refocus back in on the software and start going more feature heavy.
With that timeline architecture.
I think we would need to potentially either create our own or find another tool for doing the waveform, or we have to create something else that will sit below this that's our own technology that would somehow work based on that. So there's probably 5 ways to do it, and we haven't spent the time to figure out what's the
Okay, yeah, I was just thinking.
best.
Kind of grabbing the data and creating a report on that. Decent.
There's no doubt we could do that. Yeah, then there's a visual element. So Frank's asking about how we can somehow create a better way for showing multiple events within a time frame corresponding to the music through either a printing function or by enhancing this. My goal would be to enhance this and then take whatever we built that does the bottom part and roll that into the reporting feature and leverage that technology across both.
That will allow it to be fully used.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely. Yeah.
Cakes is nice to see.
Pyro Ignition Control does a decent job at it, which is another, I guess you could call that a competing software to this. So it's a German system. But we could do that. Time. Yeah, so when you're ready to put this onto your 18R2, you just click this little button here that has a picture of an 18R2. And this is a nice thing about it. It tells you what you haven't done. So it's telling me that I don't have a trigger channel. So I'm going to go put one in. And I know I'm going to need a trigger button. Choose button number 1. And I know I need a return channel. And it's going to yell at me here too, because it's going to say, all these are blank. And so it's saying those are screwed up. So what I'm going to do is, instead of trying to fix it, I'm pretty sure I can highlight these. Oops. Delete cues, delete all. Delete, there we go. So you click this, and it says script was successfully created. The files are stored in the Cobra directory under your show's name. File must maintain the cobra.csv file name to see the file when you upload it. So all you would do is you just do this, and if you click this, if you just want to go to the file, you can just click open directory and it brings you right to it. And you can drag that into your thumb drive. The other option is we make it simple. You just click export script, go to your thumb drive, save it. So you just click that button and click export script, and that allows you to save it right to your thumb drive. Yes?
When, say you do have some of your event time, maybe you manually change them, when you go to create your script, does it flag you for that?
So the question, are you concerned about if you made a mistake?
If you have your events out of sequence. Yeah.
Oh, yes. So the question was, if your events are out of sequence and you try to export the script, is it going to throw it out? I'm actually pretty sure it may move it. So if you change this to say 58 seconds, I'm curious to see what this will do. Yeah, see how it actually swapped them? So it reorders them. So like in Excel, you would literally have to cut that and paste that below the cell. In this situation, it will do this. The one other thing I can show you, if people are interested, and this is probably one of the most popular forms of scripting Cobra users have. And so I'm just going to make a new show. I'm just going to choose not to save this, even though it was pure brilliance. And I'm going to create what's called a step or step time event show. And that sounds kind of weird, but I'll explain what that is. Okay, so you give it a name. Okay. So a lot of people like shows that don't have music. You don't always have the time to make shows with music. In fact, probably 90+% of shows, if not more, are without music. And so in this case, I decided to make a show without any music. And no different than when you're creating that show with music, you're going to tell it what you want. You put in your events. You know, you can put in a specific channel and a queue. So if I wanted, channel 1, Q1, and I can change the event time to whatever I want. So we're just going to do something simple here. We're just going to say this one fires at 1 second, and let's put a couple more in here. Let's say this one fires at, say, 10 seconds, and then we're going to say this one fires at 45 seconds. Now, let's say that I wanted to, let's say with this third event, we're not quite sure if that's going to last 45 seconds. We don't really know. We think it's going to last 45 seconds, but we're not sure. So what we'll do is we're just going to add another cue. And in this case, you're going to see it always defaults with the word step. And so if I just do this, I'll do 1, 1, 1, and then 2, 3, 4. Okay. What the script is going to do is it's going to fire this cake, and when it's finished its course of doing whatever it's going to do, the script isn't going to fire the next cue until you press the step button. Okay? And so what you can do is you can create entire shows that basically require you to hit step at every cue, or some cues. So you may want Q1, channel 1, Q5 to be a step. You may want channel 1, Q6 to be a step. And then here, you may want to do like something cool, or maybe you fire exactly at the same time. So we'll just change this to 0 seconds, and we'll change this to 0 seconds. Let's say there's 2 other modules, 2 and 3, and let's say you want to hit Q6 on all 3 of these. So what this is going to do is at 1 second it's going to fire Q1, then at 10 seconds it's going to fire Q2, at 45 seconds it's going to fire Q3, then it's going to wait for the user, and it actually shows STP on the remote, and it's your choice when you want to fire the next event. So you hit step, then you hit step again when you want to fire the next one, then you hit step again. This time when you're hitting step, because these events are at 0 seconds right after it, it's going to fire all 3 of these at the exact same time, okay? And then you could even go back to more step functions, and then maybe you want the next one here to fire, say, at 20 seconds afterwards.
Scott, if you had your audio box hooked up, it would stop the music as well?
It stops the music.
Okay.
Now, so I did have, like for example, last year, when the audio box was actually out last year, the 4th, and people were using them, and the only one thing that's tricky about it is that when you pause and resume, the audio can sometimes skip a little bit in that first little bit of time. So where this has been successful is when people have a pause in the show, like one gentleman wanted a false finale, and the music went silent. And he wanted to decide when to start the final stage of the show once the applause had subsided. So you can put a step event, just make sure that at whatever time this is going to occur, that there's silence in your audio, and then you won't hear any skipping, assuming that's your goal. So, but you can, and it will pause the audio. But this, and you don't even, most people that do step scripting don't even put the time events. It's just the whole show is just steps, the whole way through. You know, and then they'll commonly use like the 0 second ones to have multiple positions hit at the same time. And so this is a really popular use of the system. Yeah. All right, I'll 2 seconds, guys. We need to start pulling the product for the show. So here you go. Oh, car keys. And he wants my car too. No, sir. Oh. Any other questions? Slats. I'm just trying to think of anything else that we can offer, or I can offer. Yes. Okay, so the question was, how do we handle software upgrades? Now, are you referring to firmware for the units or for the show creator? Okay, so well, the updates happen automatically when you launch the software. So when you launch it, you'll see all these little green bars going. It's actually checking for new versions. The way we do it today is that when you purchase it, it's $50. That buys you a 2-year license, and any of the updates that we do within those 2 years are included within that 2-year license. And you can buy 1 license for $50 and 2 licenses for $70. So if 2 for $70 would be $35 per machine. So it's like you can pay $20. A lot of people have like a laptop and a PC. And so originally we only had 1 license for $50, and so we decided to say, you know what, we had a lot of people felt passionate about having it on both, which makes perfect sense. And so we said, okay, $20 more, and you can get 2. That was the final outcome, I guess.
Okay, you said for $70 you can get 2.
You get 2 computers, yeah. Okay, like I said, I mean, I could probably talk about a lot of different things. If anyone has anything specifically, or I can go into advanced features with Finale, I'm not sure if anyone feels passionate either way. If not, if we want to end it, then basically the next steps would be, you know, probably within another couple hours, we'll actually be in the field plugging stuff in to the units. And obviously anyone is welcome to go through that, to actually see it in the field, like see setting it up, plugging it in, checking your continuity, just kind of getting the feel of how the the workflow is with using it.
You should do a little lesson on how you put the waivers and
Yeah, and I can show how how you can wire to the module. Like there's a couple techniques that we use that, you know, bending back the wire to put it in, wrapping the back of it around the speaker terminals, which is a nice technique, which creates some strain relief. Just kind of the simplicity of checking continuity. There's really not that much to it. I mean, you're just, yeah. Okay, so I guess, thank you. Yeah, thank you guys, and we'll hopefully see you out.
Dave, you're a good light flipper.